I believe the first order of business is to welcome our new curator, Curator Sparks, and for the oath to be given to her. And Cindy, Curator Sparks, would you go to the microphone, please?
I, Yvonne Sparks, do solemnly swear
I, Yvonne Sparks, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
and the Constitution of the State of Missouri,
and that I will faithfully demean myself
and I will faithfully demean myself
as a member of the Board of Curators
as a member of the Board of Curators
of the University of Missouri System.
of the University of Missouri System.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome, Curator Sparks.
Thank you.
The consent agenda, I don't know if anyone has any questions concerning the consent agenda. If there are no questions, we will take that up tomorrow. Hearing no objection to any of the items, we will move forward. The next item is, I believe that you have all been provided in the materials a new committee assignment that I've made just recently with the addition of Curator Sparks and Curator Covington's resignation. Are there any questions concerning the committee assignments? If not, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the committee assignments.
So moved.
Second.
Cindy, would you call the roll?
Curator Cups,
Yes.
Curator Graham,
Yes.
Curator Henriksen,
Yes.
Curator Phillips,
Yes.
Curator Snowden,
Yes.
Curator Sparks.
Yes.
You have all votes in favor.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is we will need to go into executive session later this afternoon. Is there a motion to go into executive session at a later time?
Move to go into executive session this afternoon.
Second.
Cindy?
Curator Cups,
Yes.
Curator Graham,
Yes.
Curator Henriksen,
Yes.
Curator Phillips,
Yes.
Curator Snowden,
Yes.
Curator Sparks.
Yes.
All votes in favor.
The first item on the agenda is the strategic plan highlights for the University of Missouri St. Louis. Chancellor George.
Thank you, Curator Cups, and welcome to the Board of Curators and the general officers and everyone else to the Board of Curators meeting here, the December meeting at UMSL. It's great to have you here. We dialed good weather for you. It's like this all the time in December. We'll get a little snow maybe in January, but it's great weather here. And Curator Sparks, it's great to have you on the board as well. Let me start right off with what we are doing with respect to strategic planning. And the strategic planning that we're doing drives the university. You'll notice three banners. One banner is called the UMSL Experience. And it's one of our three themes that we have driving the plan. Community partnerships is another one, and program enhancements. And these themes help craft, if you will, the overall strategic plan. It's got a series of measures in it and other levers and so forth, but over all of this are these themes. And as all the campuses have and the system has, we each have a strategy statement. Our strategy statement is very specific. it says that we will increase by 20% by the year 2018 the number of graduates at the university. And we've got a checkpoint list, if you will. We're starting at a baseline of 3,000 a year. And I should mention that we have 3 commencement ceremonies throughout the year. We have one takes place in August. Actually, it's 2 ceremonies, 3 ceremonies actually in December. We'll have them next week. In May, we have 5 ceremonies. We have 10 ceremonies total. But if you sum them all up for a given year, our baseline is 3,000. And we've actually hit our first target. Our first target was 3,150. Missed it by 4, but that's close enough for, I was going to say government work, but close enough for state work or whatever. But that is by far a campus record. We've never given that many degrees in one year. We'd like to get close now to 3,300 for next year. The goal ultimately is 3,600. I should mention that this is a priority not just for the University of Missouri St. Louis, and certainly for the system, but it's a priority here in St. Louis. You know, throughout the state, you know, we've heard these numbers before, 700,000 people that have partial degrees but not a full degree. Right here in the St. Louis region, we can identify 400,000 people that have a partial baccalaureate degree. We really want to get them to get degrees, and all of the universities in the area have been meeting on a regular basis to strategize about how we can get more graduates in the St. Louis region. This past year, degrees awarded to minorities were up by 18%. And it wasn't happenstance. We go at it very carefully and try to put resources in where it's going to do the most good. Our total enrollment right now runs at about 16,000, almost 800. It's not quite as high as it was last year. It tipped over 17,000 last year. The on-campus enrollment is down several percent. Off-campus is up. Off-campus includes things like advanced credit, students in the high school taking our courses. International students are up. We do have very high caliber students. We have record GPAs for the first-time freshmen and also for transfers, and an increasing demand for campus housing. So looking in the future, in the next 5-10 years, we're going to have to figure out how to have more campus housing and maybe more private partnerships like we've been doing before. Some bragging points. We have a number, just remind you about this campus. I mean, we're a very young campus. We're only 52 years old. We were originally a golf course, moved out to West County, and we started from scratch. We're now 470 contiguous acres, and we serve the community. We educate St. Louis. We have a serious education. We're serious value. We provide the workforce for St. Louis. So we have a very important service role, if you will, to the community. At the same time, we've got faculty, staff, and programs that are outstanding. They have national, international reputations. And so, an example. Well, I say an example. This is one of our crowning jewels, but this is the International Business Program, has consistently been ranked in the top 20 by U.S. News and World Report. This past year, we were ranked 12th. Again, not by happenstance, but we work on making this program what it is. And the number of international students that participate in this has gone up from something like 25 to close to 100 now on an annual basis. Criminology, criminal justice, again, a signature program for us. The graduate program is ranked 4th in the nation by U.S. News and World Report. That's been, ever since I've been here, for sure, that we've had that ranking. Online programs, they net exceptional rankings by U.S. News and World Report. We're first among Missouri universities for master's in education degrees, 25th nationally. We're second among Missouri universities for baccalaureate programs. Actually, first is my colleague Leo, and I'll just give a shout out to Leo, UMKC. Well, but anyway, so we have two that are doing particularly well. But you know, our online credit hours keep continuing to increase, and that's a portion of our educational offerings that we take very seriously. Academic analytics, this has got a lot of legs now. Hundreds of universities subscribe to this. Certainly, all of our campuses here in the UM system and campuses in St. Louis like SLU, WashU, and so forth. Among those with a high research activity, we're 10th among publics, 15th among privates, and you can see the collection of universities we're in, Syracuse, William & Mary, Boston College, Wake Forest. It really is amazing when you think about it because we're so young. We're only 52 years old. We've got an alumni base already of 91,000, but to have all of these nationally ranked programs, and we're ahead. in this category. And when I say academic analytics, it really is measuring faculty productivity, grants and contracts, editorialships, publications and journals, books, and so forth. But, we're ahead of Alabama, Auburn, Texas Tech, Clemson. I mean, just some outstanding universities that we, the youngster in the block, are doing so well in. And then academic analytics does programmatic rankings among all universities, not just the high research category, but to all universities. And education counseling is ranked 5th, criminology, psychology, accounting, information systems ranked in the top 10. I mean, we've got 13 disciplines in the top 50. So again, kudos to our faculty, to the students that participate in the scholarship of the faculty and the overall programs. Our fundraising is as robust as ever. We've increased from giving $7 million a year to now we've tipped last year actually over $30 million a year. We've reached, our goal was to get over $25 million a year in fundraising. We did finish our capital campaign, and we're trying to increase even more in terms of the level of giving. Philanthropy is very important to us, particularly in the area of scholarships, and I'll talk briefly about that shortly. If you haven't been to our Wellness Recreation Center, it's like a 2-second walk from here. It's got all the bells and whistles, and it opened up in August, and it's funded by student fees. It's fantastic. That fancy thing that's up there is the track. I worked on that that this morning. Got a great pool. We took some of our curators there for new curator orientation. I think they can attest that it's really a fantastic facility. We have construction projects under, actually we've got a total of $150 million of construction taking place or that has just finished, but what's still to be done is $94 million. The new science building is about 2/3 up. It's a little behind schedule because we keep encountering funny things under the ground. I mean, just things we weren't planning to encounter under the ground, but it's moving along. This is a building between the current science complex, which is really our oldest set of buildings on campus, built in the 1960s, and Natural Bridge Road. Thanks to the Missouri Department of Transportation, the Great Streets Initiative, we're in the middle of fixing up Natural Bridge Road. That goes right through the middle of campus, separates what we call North and South Campus. Very exciting project. We already have a number of high-end retailers that are interested in moving into the area. This is going to make us look even more like a real college campus, and we're very excited about the progress of that. Diversity, something we take very seriously at the university, and just kudos to our programs. We received a Higher Education and Excellence in Diversity Award from Insights into Diversity magazine. That's the 3rd year running that we received that. I don't think there's any other university in the state that has received that 3 years in a row. We have interesting billboards all around the region, and it sounds old-fashioned to be doing billboards, and we do, of course, do all the social media, radio, television, but the billboards really are a big hit, and we're doing them in Bosnian, we're doing them in Spanish, we're, of course, doing them in English, and when I talk to people, it's a very visible sign of the University of Missouri St. Louis. We do believe in inclusion, and we've had help from industries in this regard, stemming from what happened in Ferguson over the past year to year and a half. We've had an infusion of resources from companies like Emerson. Emerson's located right in the middle of Ferguson. $1.5 million of scholarships aimed toward North County students. Ameren, $500,000 of scholarships aimed toward North County students. And this was just announced this morning in the Post-Dispatch. Express Scripts has just given us $2.5 million for scholarships for North County students and to fund more students for the Bridge Program. The Bridge Program is where students in the high schools and parents come to campus from October through April on Saturdays and get them prepared to go on to the university. And 100% success rate. 100% of these students that participate in this go on to the university. Thanks to Express Scripts, they've given us over $6.5 million. It's one of these industry academic partnerships that you couldn't have written a better script for it. And anything you could imagine that you could do with industry, it's been done with Express Scripts, and certainly we thank them for the philanthropy. And that's my quick overview of strategic planning, but I'm happy to respond to any comments or questions.
Chancellor, concerning the science learning building,
Yes.
is that part of Benton Stadler?
Let me talk about Benton Stadler. Now, Benton Stadler,
I want to hear about Benton
Yeah, well,
Stadler.
it's called Benton Stadler Research. It's actually three buildings. You got Stadler, and then you got the research building, and then Benton. It's the oldest complex, and we've taken legislators through there. Often when you bring legislators on the campus, you want to show them fancy stuff. We always show them this stuff, and it's really it's in bad shape. But what we're going to do is when this new science learning building is done, and that's about a $32 million project. We're just funding it out of our hide. When that is done, then what's going to happen is we're going to take the teaching that's going on in Benton, move that into there, and we've got $13 million from the state, another $8 million from the system, and another $4 million of our own dollars. We're going to do renovation as the first phase of a $60 million project of renovation. And so that's going to take place after we move into the new building. So it's kind of a domino effect of making this work. And we have a lot of STEM students, even though we have a lot of disciplines. Of course, STEM aren't only disciplines, but in terms of this is sorely needed. We've had high school laboratories that are in better shape than these, but they won't be after this.
So what about Stadler?
Stadler will be, there's another phase. So we need Stadler to happen as well. So hopefully the state legislature and the governor will keep giving more money for M&R, and that we can eventually do that, because it's a $60 million problem we have. We're only going to take care of a little less than half of that problem.
Okay. Thank you. We talk about it every year, and
I know. Well,
it's
finally something's being done. I mean, really. I mean, and with the new science learning building, and we're happy for a donor to put their name on it. I mean, because we've left it. Learning's not the name of a person. So.
Do you anticipate Benton will be done by the end of next year?
Probably. I don't think there's going to be any surprises for Benton. You know, with the science building, of course, when you go under the ground, you find power lines, water lines, and things that are surprises. I don't think we're going to have surprises with Benton. But everything that's being done with the renovation in Benton is behind the walls. I mean, largely. I mean, HVAC and so forth.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
The chair of our chemistry department is here, Chris Spilling. Do you want to comment on that at all? Yeah. He lives it every day.
Other questions? Not? Chancellor, thank you.
Right, thank you.
The next agenda item is the MU Healthcare Annual Report.
Good afternoon. We're happy to be here. I'm joined today by our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Stephen Witt, and our Chief Financial Officer, Brian Steinis, who are there in the background and will give me an assist if there are some questions that I can't answer. This last year has been a very productive year for us within MU Healthcare. We've had some pretty substantial growth. Just some quick numbers. If you look in your packets, I won't go through all these, but you'll see that we've had over 600,000 clinic visits. We've had over 25,000 discharges, and the health system has about 5,900 staff. And so it's a large enterprise, and it continues to grow every year. In revenues, this is the entire MU Healthcare, including the schools of nursing and medicine and health professions. In revenues, we end up at about $1.3 billion, and in research expenditures and grant expenditures at about $33 million for fiscal year 15. In terms of what that means in workforce, the three schools in the health system come in at about 7,681 in terms of workforce, with 5,417 learners. The health system has been experiencing some unprecedented growth, as we've talked about in the past. This gives you a list of our inpatient discharge growth trends. And so we've grown about 16% over the last 4 or 5 years. And we continue to do that even into 2016. Our emergency room growth is 46% for the last 4 years. We ended the year at about 71,000 emergency room visits, and for this year, we're annualizing to be at about 75,000 emergency room visits. The reason emergency room visits are important is because about 30% of our emergency room visits end up in an inpatient bed. So as you see those grow, you know that you're going to be growing your hospital facilities as well. If you look at our market share within Boone County, that has been steadily growing as well to now at about 55%. And then if you look at our 25 county service area, which is another way that we track our market share, we're at about 26% market share. Again, most of that market share being taken up by the local hospitals in rural mid-Missouri, and so we end up being the referral center. Some of the things that we've tried to do to accommodate the expansion is build out some of our facilities and get some ways to decompress our emergency room. So we opened 3 Mizzou Quick Care clinics in the grocery stores. These are clinics that run 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And try to decompress some of the emergency rooms. We've seen these have been hugely successful. They've exceeded our volume projections, but even with those, we've seen our emergency rooms continue to grow, partly because of the great hard work of our physicians and staff. We expanded to South Providence Medical Park, which is about a $45 million replacement facility of our Green Meadows campus. And then the Mizzou BioJoint Center and the Missouri Orthopedic Expansion, that is one center together. The steel is going up on that. That's about a $45 million project, and will make us the first and only center in the world using the what we're calling the Mizzou BioJoint, which is a natural cadaver joint, which uses a process to extend the life of that so that we can create better matches from donors. And then in June of this year, we are creating plans to bring an expansion facility proposal to the Board of Curators. So this is a little bit of a heads up that you may be seeing that in the next few months. We won't go through each of these. The ones that I will show is if you look at the change column, you'll see that for the most part, we're ahead of budget in our volumes and ahead of last year's actual. The 2 exceptions are deliveries, which are a little bit flat to prior year, but a little bit down. One of the things that we've got that we've just announced 2 weeks ago was our low intervention birth program, which uses nurse midwives in the hospital setting working in collaborative practice with our OB physicians, which will definitely increase those delivery numbers. And then in outpatient surgery, we're not on target, but we're a bit higher than we were prior year, so it's still growing even though it's a variance to budget. But our inpatient surgery numbers, again, are exceeding budget and exceeding prior year, so we continue to grow in all of those categories. Our financial performance, what you see to the left there is we had a budget of about $20 million in net assets within MU Healthcare and came in at about $22 million. And one of the more important lines is we were able to build our cash from 2014 of 193 days cash on hand to 215 days. That's an important metric for us, as that's right at the Moody's A-rated, which is 214.
Would you go back to the previous slide? I noticed on the non-operating revenues, there was a variation there of 36,000 negative, or 36 million negative. Could you explain that?
Out of the non-operating revenues comes a lot of our physician gain share, or what we call performance-based support. So we've got a program with the School of Medicine that when we exceed our targets, they can share in the gain of that. So there's a lot of money there that actually is transfers over to the School of Medicine.
So that's a good number.
Yeah, so that's a good thing for the School of Medicine. Yeah.
Right.
In terms of quality improvement in healthcare, it's a very turbulent time right now, and value-based purchasing is something that's changing the entire industry. A focus on quality, being able to prove it and improve it, continues to be this major theme. And so what you've seen at the university, and one of the things that's helped our growth, is that over the last several years, we've taken our patient satisfaction from the 15th percentile, we're up to the 48th percentile in total, But if you break apart clinic and hospital, what you see is that the hospital's patient satisfaction is in the 86th percentile, and we're still struggling a little bit on the clinic side, where we're in about the 40th or 50th percentile, depending on the clinic. What that means in healthcare, which is a very competitive space for patient satisfaction, is that about 79, on a scale of 1 to 10, about 79% of our patients rate us as a 9 or a 10, and about 95% rate us from 7 to 10. So it's fairly competitive, but we still set our goal for ourselves to always be in the upper quartile. We're making some changes, or the School of Medicine is making some changes to the physician incentive plan in light of the new focus on quality, or the increased focus on quality in healthcare, to include patient satisfaction and quality metrics as part of physician compensation, whereas in the past it may have been more weighted to activity and volume. Some of the other things that have improved over the last few years is our employee engagement scores have increased quite a bit and gone from the 15th percentile to the 52nd percentile. Our jump over the last year from the 26th to the 52nd is actually the largest gain that our vendor of the survey, Press Ganey, has ever seen. And so we think some of the things that we're doing around driving employee engagement are working, and that involves some monthly rounding programs we do and some performance improvement projects that we have our staff engaged in. This is one of the items that we think is helping with our employee engagement, and we'll do that even more. In a large organization like ours, how to communicate to over 5,500 people and get them the targeted messages you want is very difficult. You send daily emails, and in a 24/7 operation, you can't really have a big staff meeting and get everybody's eyeballs at one time. The communication station concept creates 70 stations where when you go to swipe in, we've got one message on a screen that is the message we want you to have that day, whether it's get your flu shot, enroll in your benefits, come to the employee barbecue or something. It's the one message we want you to have that day. And then we've got some tear sheets which give you about a 2-week newsletter of the messages that we want you to have for the next 2 weeks. So it's a way of kind of layering those important messages. In terms of some other important quality metrics, our mortality ratio, which is risk adjusted, is normalized on a 1-point scale. The University Health Consortium is the standard that you see on the right. 1 would be that you have mortality, which would be as expected given the patient's severity. Last year we ended at 0.97, which means we are better than average, or better what the UHC would expect. The upper quartile, which is always our goal, is 0.83. Year-to-date 2016, when we last ran the numbers, we were at 0.91, and our last 3, and that's for more months, but the last 3 months has been at 0.84. So our last 3 months is trending in the right direction, and we've got a pretty intense focus on that, and are hoping that we end the year in the upper quartile. In terms of 30-day readmission rates, this is a major focus with CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, because they don't want to be paying people or paying organizations when people get readmitted, because they see that as a failure of the initial admission. And so we currently are at 14.5%. Prior year we at 14.8%, and our target to be in the top quartile is 12%. One of the things that CMS is struggling with right now is the whole issue of socioeconomic criteria for readmissions. Many academic medical centers like ours cater as a safety net hospital to people from long geographic regions. Some of the things that factor into a high readmission rate are people who don't go to their primary care physician, don't have transportation to their physician for follow-up appointments, and that can drive your readmission rate higher. So CMS is working on adding socioeconomic factors so that you don't have a situation where you're giving more Medicare dollars to Palm Springs and Scottsdale and taking them away from Memphis, New Orleans, and Columbia, Missouri. In terms of our improvement at the employee level, this is an exciting program that we've started about 2 years ago. And given the rapid changes in healthcare and how quickly we have to improve our quality and change, we started a program where every employee is required to participate in 2 performance improvement projects per year. And so in our first year, we did about 1,071 completed projects, and this year we will have done 1,300 projects. We log all of these projects into a database. When you're evaluated at the end of the year, your supervisor has access to all of your projects that you've been involved in. We've gotten some great projects and improvements that have come out of this, and our point with employees is that in healthcare, their job is not just to do their work, but it's to improve their work. Our Culture of Yes is another initiative that's helping with employee engagement and helping change our culture of improvement and growth. And this is essentially our culture of together we care, deliver, innovate, and serve. This is something that when we round on employees, we make sure that they can recite this back to us and recite our key 10 behaviors. We make this part of their evaluation. And evaluate them based on exhibiting these behaviors. And then we also have rewards and recognition programs. We will be sharing with you in an upcoming board meeting our presentation that we're doing, our ad campaign that we're doing around the Culture of Yes to take our culture and make it outward facing to our patients, which we think is going to be exciting. This year, we started a program to invest more in our people and our leaders by starting a leadership academy. So we have a track for all 400 of our leaders, from supervisors up to physician leaders and C-level leaders, so that they have required training that they go through in things like strategy and diversity and inclusion, as well as conflict resolution and financial skills, and that has been very well received. We've also, with some of the healthcare shortages, started internal programs where we can take some of our own employees and train them in certain careers like neurodiagnostic technologist and certified medical assistants, and provide that training to them rather than looking for that outside where we're having trouble recruiting. In terms of new models of care, one of the things that healthcare is struggling with right now is, as good as it is and high quality as it is, people can't afford it. Even if you cut healthcare premiums in half, most people probably couldn't afford the premiums. So what we've essentially got to be looking at in the future is how do we redesign our models of care. So rather than having a $180 physician visit, can we get you into a $89 quick care if the nurse practitioner can do the same thing? This year, what we've done is piloted and built the ability to do electronic visits, because there are some things that are done in that $180 physician visit that actually could be done through an electronic visit for $40. And so part of it is training our market and training our providers to allow people to dock in at these lower levels of care. As you see the high deductible plans increasing, you're going to see more and more employees and more of companies be better shoppers about where to go for value with their care. The other piece that is quite big is this whole idea around population health and clinically integrated health networks. And so what payers want today is not just that you have a low fee schedule. They want to say, if I've given you 5,000 employees, I want you to show me how you're managing their diabetes, their wellness, and what their per member per year spend is. And many of these networks that we are becoming involved in, like the Health Network of Missouri and Impact, which we'll be bringing back to you later today, are part of that. In terms of consumer perception, we do these surveys every 3 years. We continue to be the strongest brand and position in our market. Our ad awareness continues to be the strongest in our market. Our strongest service lines tend to be neurosciences, pediatrics, oncology, and orthopedics. And we have a few that I would call emerging, but which have the ability to become number one in our market, such as our women's and cardiology programs that need a little bit more work. Women's, we're about 200, we do about 1,800 deliveries. We're about 200 deliveries away from being number one in the market. Some of our accolades recently have to do with our level 1 stroke designation, our women's and children's hospital being designated as baby friendly. We also have had an unusually large number of healthcare IT information technology awards. One of those is called the Davies Award. It's awarded by the Health Information Management and Systems Society. There were only 2 of these awards awarded last year in the world, and MU Healthcare was one of the recipients. That is an award similar to the Malcolm Baldrige Award, whereas some of these awards like Most Wired and Meaningful Use just say, do you have the technology plugged in? The Davies Award says, do you have it plugged in and isn't it creating value? Are you getting what you wanted to get out of it? And so we feel like with our partnership with Cerner, some of those awards have been possible to us that may not have been in the past. And then in terms of affiliations, in this time of pretty significant change in healthcare, we see partnerships as a way to move faster. And so we've had our MD Anderson Cancer Network in its second year. That has been very successful. We've actually grown in all of our modalities for cancer care and increased our operating margin above the cost of doing that program, and think that will continue to be successful. I talked a little bit about the Health Network of Missouri and Impact Health. The Health Network of Missouri is a Mid-Missouri collaborative, which serves as a chapter of the larger Impact statewide collaborative. Then in terms of private physician groups, we're also working to clinically integrate those groups within the Columbia region. Our Tiger Institute for Health Innovation is our partnership with Cerner, and this year we renewed that contract for another 10 years. And the focus on that is going to become making the University of Missouri Healthcare an iconic healthcare IT leader. One of the things that Cerner has noted is when they bring people to the University of Missouri to look at our healthcare IT infrastructure, that we have this ability to absorb and adapt and create change a lot quicker than some of their other clients. Many of their other clients may install an electronic medical record and not update it for 5 years or 10 years. What they like about the University of Missouri is the culture our physicians and nurses have is they want the next new thing every time it's available, so we continue to evolve and advance very quickly. And then we are maintaining our relationship with Mizzou Athletics and the university from a branding standpoint. I've been asked to give 3 slides, some updates on the School of Medicine and Health Professions and Nursing. And so wanted to go through some of the accomplishments there. From a School of Medicine standpoint, the School of Medicine class for 2015 ended up scoring nearly 10 points higher than the national average on their U.S. medical licensing exams, and 99% of their class matched. Nationally, that number is 94%, and in schools of medicine, there's becoming a real problem with not enough residencies for the medical students coming out, which was unheard of even 5 years ago, but it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem. We've also got our Department of Family and Community Medicine, which is nationally ranked and is number 8 in the nation. And then our School of Medicine expansion, which is a $42 million expansion, which will increase the class size for the School of Medicine. The Bryant Scholars Program is a program that encourages undergraduates to have an early admission decision into the School of Medicine, with the trade-off being that they will work in rural populations. The School of Nursing, if Dean Miller was here, she would be upset with me if I didn't remember to tell people it is the #1 nursing school in the nation, and recently received the largest CMS grant at the university of $14.8 million. They also are planning for an expansion of their building. We are personally really interested in this because there's a impending nursing shortage which is coming. We've been working with the School of Nursing on how to increase their class size, but they can only do it so far as their building will let them do that. And so that's a partnership that we're excited about. And then in terms of students, they've had about 1,464 students this year, and are getting ready to, I think, sell their land at Sinclair Farms to help create a funding source for their new building. Lastly, the School of Health Professions had a 100% pass rate on their licenses and certification exams. And the School of Health Professions continues to grow. It's the largest program at MU at this point. And they are actually leading the way on a new innovation program, an incubator program that we had a meeting about yesterday, and Dean Hagland is doing a great job leading that effort as well. So with that, I will ask if there's any questions.
Chairman. Yeah, Mitch, I know on your, one of the graphs you had on the ER, it was up 20%. And I always thought if you had more emergency room visits, it was costly to a institution. But what I heard you say, that it's really not costly to your, is that correct?
Yeah, so the way to think about it is healthcare is going through this transition where in old models where you got paid for volume, you wanted as much volume as you could get. What we realize though is that's a very short-term view because payers are really going to want to hold us accountable in the future for our per member per year spend. So when we see our volume increasing, volume's not bad so long as your unique patients is growing. So if I've got 100,000 unique patients who see me, I want to get their per member per year ER visits as low as possible. What we've seen though is we've actually been growing our unique patients at the same time we're growing volume. And that's okay. There's still a lot of those ER patients that could probably be at an urgent care, they could probably be at a quick care, they could probably be an electronic visit. So we're trying to create those lower levels of care because we anticipate that while maybe a small percentage of our pay right now is at risk, that it's going to be more at risk in the future. And we've got to go through that painful thing where you destroy your current platform so you can survive, on the new platform.
I have two areas of questions. The first is the financial relationship between MU Health and the medical school. I noticed on your third slide that you indicate that there in this year were $25 million in grants to the School of Medicine. Is that formulaic or is it based on grants applied for and is it dependent on the margin that you create each year?
Yeah, and so in terms of money that comes from the MU Healthcare to the School of Medicine, there's several ways that occurs. The first is through what's called the CARTS program. That stands for Clinical, Research, Administrative, Teaching, and then Strategic. And basically all of our medical directorships and things, and it's very common with academic medical centers, you will have some departments that have what we call structural deficits, that they never make money. So our child health program will never make money, but we support it through other revenues. Anesthesia, ER, other ones, they tend to not make money. So, so there's about $42 million this last year of what we call CARTS money that goes to the School of Medicine. And there's additional money that they can make as part of our performance-based support. And we've had this program for the last 3 years where if we exceed our budgetary targets as a health system and there's extra money, we can share essentially half of that with the School of Medicine. So the first year that we had the program, it was $9 million. The second year was $4 million, and this last year was $15 million. This was a banner year. The requirement, though, is that money must be used for research purposes or non-physician compensation purposes. Yeah.
That leads into my second question, and that is, of all the physicians, both medical school and those clinicians in the health system who aren't actively teaching, how many are actually engaged in research as a primary investigator or in some substantial way?
Yeah. So, and Steve Witt may know do you actually know the answer to that right now? Okay. Do you want to give us a rough estimate?
Well, that's pretty finite and granular, but sure, if you've got that information.
It depends on the department. Most of the PhDs that are members of the clinical departments have NIH active NIH funding. Most of the clinicians who primarily teach and see patients are not NIH funded. So of the tenure track faculty, the majority have active funding. Of the clinical faculty, the majority do not.
But you have set aside time for the clinical faculty who do mostly clinical work in teaching so that they, if they choose to, may engage in research. I ask the question because you're one of the primary opportunities that the university has to do research that counts toward AAU status. And so I think we're pretty interested in seeing that the great success of MU Health helps raise the ability to do research, including research by your clinicians.
Yeah, and Dr. Witt just stood back up, so I'm assuming you want to chime in on that.
So that's precisely what the strategic transfer fund in the clinical health system, the medical school for the dean and clinical cares, and strategically use that funding to decide which research initiatives we fund, backstop, and bring funding for. That's exactly what that money is for, and that's what the plans in the future that are developed at the planning sessions are.
Is that a mutual decision between the dean of the med school and the head of MU Health?
And the executive vice chancellor for health affairs.
Thank you.
6 months.
All right.
Yeah, typically what had happened before the gain share is, and each department did it a little bit differently, you would bring in a physician and say, you're going to be, 0.8 clinical and 0.2 research, but really that money on the 0.2 often was paid for out of clinical dollars. You were just suppressing that and shifting it over there if they didn't have external sources of funding or internal department funding. So what the performance-based support has done is create a little bit of a fund so that they don't have to fund it out of their own clinical revenues. It can come from hospital gain share revenue.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the meeting of the Compensation and Human Resources Committee. And John?
Looking around to see if Betsy Rodriguez is in the audience. Okay. We want to give her recognition. We'll save that for tomorrow. Other than that, we would move to have executive session this afternoon at an appropriate time.
Second.
Curator Graham,
Aye.
Curator Henriksen,
Yes.
Curator Phillips,
Yes.
Curator Sparks.
Yes.
All committee votes in favor.
Next is the Academic, Student, and External Affairs Committee, and I've asked Curator Snowden to handle that. So, Curator Snowden?
Mr. Chairman, today we have 3 informational items and 2 action items for the Academic, Student, and External Affairs Committee. I'd like to ask Dr. Robert Schwartz to go to the podium, and he's going to give a report on research and economic development, the annual report.
Thank you, Curator Snowden. I'm glad to be with you today. I thought maybe I would start, for those of you on the board who don't know me, with just a quick background about my journey to this point of interim Vice President for Research, Economic Development, and Academic Affairs. Spent a little time in industry, spent a little time in a national lab complex out in Albuquerque called Sandia Labs. Worked in another higher learning institution called Clemson University for a number of years before I came in 2002 to Rolla, Missouri, where I came as a faculty member, and over the 10 years I spent in Rolla, was very fortunate to work in a couple of administrative positions there. In 2012, I came up to UM System, where I worked as Chief of Staff for 2.5 years. Then went to work on one of our other campuses. I spent about 13 months as Interim Dean of Engineering on the MU campus. Came back to System October 15th of 2015, and last Friday, pending board approval, was appointed as Interim VP. So I'm really glad to be here today. What I'd like to do today is talk a little bit about the 5-point plan that was instituted by Dr. Foley in the Office of Academic Affairs, Research, and Economic Development. This is put in place to enhance research, entrepreneurial ventures, campus collaboration, and economic development. And for today's report, what I'll do is I'll give a sample of each of the 5 points. As a reminder, they include working together for synergy across Missouri, growing our entrepreneurs and innovators, being smart with intellectual property, unleashing the power of the willing, and consulting and borrowing from the successful. So while new to the office, I fully subscribe to the plan, and I look forward to continuing to bring it to fruition. So the first one I'd like to talk about is working together for synergy, and the example I'll present is with the Accelerator Fund, which has recently been created. This will provide capital and startup expertise to help entrepreneurs launch market-changing companies in mid-Missouri through a professionally managed fund. The board approved this fund at the October meeting, and we're working closely with the Missouri Innovation Center, who will manage the fund, which was set up by the Office of the Treasurer at System. The fund is intended to advance University of Missouri affiliated businesses located in Columbia and those willing to locate in Columbia, and will include funds from both private and public investors. This includes high net worth investors, the Missouri Innovation Center, System, and a group called Centennial Investors. Expect to see a return on this investment over time as we're able to assist the further development of new businesses in this portion of the state. The next topic I'd like to talk about briefly is growing entrepreneurs and innovators. In 2014, the Entrepreneurial Scholars and Interns program was launched to provide interested students with entrepreneurial-related courses and internship opportunities. This will aid in developing entrepreneurs and boost economic development within Missouri. The first cohort was comprised of 14 students from the 4 campuses enrolled in courses, and they also completed summer internships where they worked alongside business owners while building their own startup companies. We've been aggressive in seeking additional support for this program and have gained further momentum from the state through an investment from the Missouri Technology Corporation, which provided an additional $145,000 of funding for the program, which will allow us to increase the number of students from 14 in the program to 18. Today, I'd like to show you a little bit more of this program with some feedback from the students who've been participating. So I'd like to go ahead and ask that the video be rolled.
It's a certificate program. You're going to do a couple courses, and then you have an internship, or you can kind of work on your own business plan. It's basically helping you figure out the actual skills that you need to have, like hands-on work. So it's really hands-on work.
Having ESIP to help fund and give me some time to read books, meet mentors, and network with so many different people in different walks of life. It's maybe a better communicator for sure, and definitely a better designer.
The program financially opened up a lot of options, allowed me to launch my website, cash flow that I already had able for products. Cash flow that I already had able for products. Connected me with the people that built my website, which is another entrepreneur. And then the mentors that they've put me with. And then the mentors that they've put me net there. If a problem arises, you know you have someone. If a problem arises, you know you have someone that'll respond to you pretty quickly.
Being an undergraduate business student, I had no idea what type of research that I had no idea what type of research that I had no idea that companies were coming out of the university. I had no idea that companies were coming out of the university and finding how much they cared about and how much they cared about seeing us succeed and seeing us being able to start companies and hopefully giving exposure to the university that way.
And the mentorships that I've formed through this program is definitely something that would have been hard to find, at least, without the program. I mostly worked with a cleaning company, but I've helped start 3 other ones. Some of those it was great to kind of apply the experiences to those new companies as well.
What I really like about it is not so much the analysis from an academic point of view, but the feelings that happen to entrepreneurs. The feeling that hits you when prospects say no, the feeling that happens when you have to fire someone because your idea didn't scale to generate enough revenue. Those feelings are very important to have, so you understand what you're getting into when you're doing a business. Because you have to be in a point where the pain of failure isn't as great as the thrill of victory. Because on the upside of those feelings is when I do get that first customer, when I make that first sale, when I have a happy customer, those are the joyous moments. And those have to exceed the pain side of doing this. And I think the internship program allows people to understand those feelings and know what they're going to get hit with as they develop and grow their businesses.
Thank think you can see why we're really excited about that program, and we'll soon be announcing the next group of students that will be participating in that program. Let me talk very briefly about the area of intellectual property. Last year, we reported that the university had loosened its policies with respect to intellectual property ownership to bring more direct industry investment into research. This change has empowered faculty to make decisions regarding intellectual property ownership based on their own individual research needs and goals. In addition, the new policies have streamlined the contract review process and improved efficiencies by reducing barriers to working with industrial sponsors. Going forward, we'll be looking for additional ways in which we can further improve management of our intellectual property, reduce barriers, and help us reach our strategic goals. In my interim role, I'll be meeting with faculty members on the Patent Committee, the Campus Research and Technology Transfer Officers, and Missouri businesses, among others, to identify improvements we can continue to make to our intellectual property processes and ways we can conduct more industrial-focused research and spur new business development. For the next part of the 5-point plan, which is Unleash the Power of the Willing, this past year, we've engaged in an approach called the Faculty Entrepreneurial Workshop Program. The UM System Office of Academic Affairs, Research, and Economic Development collaborated with the Small Business Development Centers, the SBDCs, associated with our 4 campuses to provide 8-week-long entrepreneurial workshops to our faculty, researchers, and postdocs who have an interest in starting a company. 49 registrants attended the sessions in 2015, many with teams of 3 or 4 people. Focusing primarily on UM faculty and researchers, the classes are taught using the NSF I-Core Launchpad, Lean Launchpad model, and an online platform that allows the Missouri Business Development Program facilitators, many of whom worked or are working on I-Core team projects with faculty to collaborate across the system on faculty teams and projects. During the coming year, the curriculum will be supplemented with over 30 subject matter experts across the 4 campuses, addressing topics such as marketing, finance, venture capital, SBIR, STTR, technology transfer, enterprise architecture, taxes, research, intellectual property, and investing, to name a few. The 2016 cohort will be similar. However, we expect to be more effective using the collaborative online platform and by sharing speakers across the campuses using different media technologies. We've also launched over the past year Mizzou VMS, the Mizzou Venture Mentoring Service. This is borrowed from MIT and was launched with the help of Michael Foster, a mentor trainer of the MIT VMS program. Mizzou VMS launched with 22 founding mentors. These mentors include successful MU graduates, local businessmen, and Columbia entrepreneurs. Mizzou VMS is serving entrepreneurs that include MU students, faculty, staff, and alumni, licensees of the Office of Technology Transfer, Management and Industrial Relations, clients of the Missouri Innovation Center, and clients of Missouri Small Business Development Centers. Mentoring sessions with entrepreneurs have begun and are held at the Missouri Innovation Center. Several additional entrepreneurs were processed for mentor assignment at the first monthly mentor meeting on December 2nd, 2015. The program is connecting, my monitor went blank, sorry. Program is connecting the MU community with area mentors to contribute to an entrepreneurial ecosystem that will help keep our entrepreneurs here in mid-Missouri. If successful in MU, and I know we will be, we will investigate whether it can be replicated at the other 4 campuses. Excuse me, other 3 campuses. Let me just do a little bit to review some of the research and economic development accomplishments over the past year. And you should have received a 1-page front and back handout of some of the work that we've been doing. I've spoken a lot about the programs and efforts within the 5-point plan being followed by our office. Let me turn attention to some of the results. I've chosen to highlight a concerning trend that appears evident, which is a decline in our research expenditures. I don't believe I can comment today on all of the various factors that may contribute to that, but certainly one factor is federal investment in research and development. The National Science Foundation recently reported that when adjusted for inflation, federal funding for higher education research and development declined by 5.1% between fiscal year 13 and fiscal year 14. And when comparing fiscal year 14 to fiscal year 11, funding is down by more than 11%. This is the largest multi-year decline in federal funding for academic research and development since data collection was initiated in 1972. So certainly it's a factor in reduced research expenditures, and that's been supported by many of the comments I hear from faculty about the increasing challenge of raising research money or getting money to carry out their scholarship from the federal government. Let me talk briefly about one of the areas of approach that we'll be using to try to reverse this trend, and that is the area of opportunity hires. System-wide, we plan more than 40 opportunity hires to align expertise areas with federal priorities based on campus strategic plans and needs. At MU, 20 hires are planned, including those in physical sciences, medical and health sciences, plant and animal sciences, engineering, and big data. At UMKC, 5 hires are planned in the areas of cell biology and biophysics and in the School of Computing and Engineering. At S&T, 20 hires are planned, mostly among tenure-track early career faculty. 4 have already been made in the areas of business and information technology, physics, mechanical and aerospace engineering, and computer science. UMSL plans a strategic hire in the mental health area. As I begin to wrap up, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the impact of the funding programs that we've had for a number of years. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank all of the folks on the team within the office that have really built many successful programs that I think are having a very positive impact for us. But I'm going to highlight the output of 2 faculty in a couple of specific areas. And the first one I'd like to highlight is that of Dr. Shannon Fogg, Associate Professor and Chair of the History and Political Science Department at Missouri S&T. I had the pleasure to read Dr. Fogg's book called The Politics of Everyday Life in Vichy, France, and I've taken the liberty to pull a quote from that book, and then I'm going to ask you to think about something. And the quote I selected is shown in the lower right there, where it talks about the pursuit of ever-decreasing precious goods forced a variety of strangers to interact on a daily basis, creating tensions and alliances between individuals as a result of material concerns. That was 1942 to 1944. It doesn't sound too different than the day and age we live in today. So if you want to think about what's going to happen with energy demand over the next 20 years, it's predicted to grow by 20%. At the same time, we're depleting petroleum reserves, and the world is really becoming flat. So this is a slide that I modified from a talk I used to give to students. Believe it or not, sometimes when you talk to engineering students, they're not too keen on listening to their history faculty members. I know that's really hard to believe. But their ability to have as an instructor someone like this who can shed light on maybe the commonality in the way we have to look at the world and how we're going to have to work to develop responses to the challenges that we face is obviously critically important. So this book was made possible from a grant through the Research Board Foundation. The other result I'd like to highlight today, also from the University of Missouri Research Board, is some work that's been done more recently. In fact, this book is just coming out right now by Dr. John McManus, also from the Raleigh campus, who I happen to know and feel very fortunate to call him colleague and friend. And this was published as part of the Johns Hopkins Witness to History series, an incredibly prestigious press, and it deals with the title of the book, Hell Before Their Very Eyes, American Soldiers Liberate Concentration Camps in Germany, April 1945. And I've read to you a lot already today, but I'm going to read to you just a little bit more, and I'll be brief with this. And I debated about which passage out of this book I wanted to utilize, and as you can imagine, some of these are very graphic in their nature, so I'm not going to share one of those. But this book can force us to think, to reflect, and I really put it up here as an example of the quality of the scholarship that our faculty are doing, as well as the quality of the writing that our authors who are also our faculty, are able to do. So let me just be very brief, but let me try to read just a very short passage out of this book. This is from the preface. As the years unfolded and my work on a variety of books proceeded, I was struck by the frequency with which combat veterans ventured the opinion that the most unforgettable and sometimes traumatic aspect of their wartime service was the experience of liberating the concentration camps. As a historian of combat and one who appreciates what a visceral experience it is for the participants, I found these contentions startling. What could be more powerful than combat, I wondered. I'd always been deeply moved by the Holocaust, though I had only studied it in passing as a non-specialist. I came to realize that seeing the concentration camps was a seminal moment, one that defined the entire war for many American soldiers. It brought them face to face with a dark and troubling world of human degradation, along with its sickening physical manifestations of terrible sights and smells. The act of liberating or witnessing a camp stood out from the workaday dangers of frontline action, when the objectives for a single day were generally the same as any other. Stay alive, keep advancing, then repeat until the war finally ends. More than that, the camps represented for the soldiers an important moment of human trauma, human vulnerability, and redemption. So I'm only on page 25 of that book, and John said, I don't think you're going to enjoy it, and I have to admit, it's probably not the type of book you read to enjoy, but it is the type of book you read when you want to reflect and you want to really understand the human condition. We also today face the challenge of veteran suicide, so I can't imagine how that book might help someone who has to work with veterans and understand what they've been through in a greater way. So greatly proud of the accomplishments of our faculty. And again, in part, that book was facilitated by a grant from the System Office of Academic Affairs, Research, and Economic Development. So I'll just finish with one last slide. And the first headline I've already read to you, which talks about continuing decline in R&D funding. The headline below is a bit more optimistic, okay? It says that a budget deal could put science back on the world stage. So I'm not sure what the future is. I don't have a crystal ball, but I can tell you we have a great team of people in the office. I'm happy to be a part of it. I look forward to working with them. We're going to keep pushing forward on the 5-point plan, which is part of our overall strategic plan. We're going to keep an eye open to opportunity for other things that we can and should do to wisely use our resources, and we look forward to further supporting our faculty and advancing our RED mission. So Curators noted. With that, I'll conclude my report.
Dr. Schwartz, I enjoyed your report, and we're happy to have you aboard. Thanks. I know you took the place of Chancellor Foley, at least one of his jobs, but now he doesn't rule over you. So if you want to change, this to a 7-point program or a 3-point program, you have the right to do that. You realize that?
I'm keeping my eye on him before I answer that. I think it's been very well crafted, very well thought out, and has some great stuff in it. I hope that, there are some big shoes to fill over there, okay? And we'll see what I'm capable of. I'm not sure I'm capable of filling them, but I'm going to try.
Well, I was saying that in jest, as you know. I don't have any other questions. Anyone on the board have any other questions?
Just one real quick question.
Yes.
I was interested in the undergraduate entrepreneur program. You're at 14, you're going to go to 18. Where would you see that number 5 years down the road? Where would you hope to see it?
Where I would see it, I think, is going to be dictated by how effective the program is. Are we able to muster other resources to help support it? I'd be happy to see it at 50 if you asked me for a number today. I think that's a reasonable target. I think we're going to have to continue to do better working with businesses within Missouri, and we're going to have to do better building new businesses as well. So if you wanted a number today, I'd say 50. Hank, is that okay?
I think it's a great number. And that's 50 per year.
50 per year.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the program could have
I understood
as
that.
many as 250.
It's a good program.
Thank you. We think so.
It is.
Yeah.
Curator Sparks.
My question was, and it's probably an obvious one, about diversity in the program, diversity participation, or goals to increase diversity? Because it was pretty clear from the presentation and the images, as well as some of the numbers. And in your word cloud, I did not see diversity or recruitment in that slide.
We'll pay attention to that. Thank you. I don't know that I have a deeper answer than that today. Certainly we'll take that under consideration. Thank you.
Dr. Schwartz, I had a question concerning the strategic hires, and I guess I note that it appears that there were 20 allocated to S&T, 20 allocated to MU, UMSL 1 and UMKC 5. Are those budgetary, was that defined by what they could afford or what they could raise to match?
It comes out, they would come out of campus budgets, and some of those would have been linked back, and I don't know that I know this off the top of my head, but some of those would have been linked back to the strategic funding requests that were placed and which ones were then awarded by system to the campuses.
And were some funded by donors?
Not to my knowledge. I think those were all coming out of dollars that the campuses were putting in. The campuses are still going after other endowed chair hires, so.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
To put it another way, there were performance fund allocations, but I think most of the ones I just saw on that slide were reallocations within, maybe Cheryl could say, but I think at S&T those were your strategic reallocations, maybe matched somewhat by performance funds.
Correct.
Chancellor Foley, if you'd get a microphone in front of you, we'll understand you better when you make a comment. Are there any other questions of the committee?
Peter Phillips?
I have a follow-up question. On the UMKC allocation of those targeted hires, I didn't see anything with respect to the med school, and I'm thinking back a couple of years ago when we approved the hiring of the physicians, which would create at least a substantial increased cash flow for the next several years, that some of those funds would be reallocated to hire some specific research doctors at the med school. Is that from a different pool so that they're still being targeted, but they're not included in your spreadsheet, or have we lost track of that?
I wouldn't say I've lost track of it. I probably haven't figured it out yet. But Leo might be able to comment.
Well, I think a lot of what we expect to do is with more influence over the hires, we'll be able to fill more of the endowed chairs that are currently open. So there's funding there to support many of those.
So they're not new positions, it's filling vacant positions that have been endowed?
That's in part, yes. But as you know, the new dean is working on a strategy that should drive some improved structure and will point the way toward new faculty hires.
Maybe at our next meeting at UMKC, we can hear about where those dollars are being spent.
Right.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you very much.
Dr. Schwartz, thank you very much. Next, we're going to hear from Dr. Steve Graham, Senior Associate Vice President, give us a review of the fall enrollment report.
Good afternoon. It just shows you what kind of respect we have for Hank Foley that takes Silvis to get up here and do his job. He's grinning. What I'm going to do, in your packet is a very complete report that highlights the enrollment trends over the last decade. We like to provide this for you so you can see not only what the enrollments look like this year, but how they've evolved over the last decade, and it's breakdown quite detailed. So I'm going to hit the highlights today and just cover that for you. Okay, next slide. Probably a couple. There you go. One more. There we go. As you can see, we've grown from about 2005 to 2015 from around 63,000 students to around 78,000, or roughly an increase of 14,000 okay? 23% during that time period. I think what's worth emphasizing at this point is it's without additional funds. In fact, with fewer funding from the state, we've added an entire public university campus when you consider all 4 of our university campuses. So FTE enrollment, which is different than head count, went from 48,000 to 60,000, I'm sorry, about 25% increase. And then as you can see, the increases according to each campus: 7,000 new students at Mizzou, 2,000 at KC, 2,700 at S&T, and around 500 at UMSL. So I'll give you a sense of that decade's work. Next slide. And this is just a real graphic depiction. You can sort of see how the different campuses in terms of the layout over the total number over that 10-year period. Next slide. I thought it would be helpful, too, to chart this so you can get a sense of the graphs, and they're labeled. And you can see that the majority of the growth occurred from about 2007 or 8 to 2012. You can see it spike up there. So although we've got a fairly good chunk during the last 10 years and really good increases, adding an entire campus, you'll see it's flattened a little bit toward the last couple years. Okay? The other thing that we also like to look at is how's our share compared to other public four-year universities in the state. And as you can see, we were able to grab a bigger piece of the market share, moving from 46% to roughly almost 50% of the market share. Next slide will show that sort of graphically. Our growth was much greater, 27% versus the 12% in the other four-year publics. So once again, good growth over time, pretty steep trend. Another thing that a lot of times we get questions from the curators is, what do the students look like as you're adding a bunch more? So we've added 14,000 new students to the mix. And here you can see a whole decade's worth of ACT scores, which is just one indicator among many that talks about kind of demonstrates the academic prowess of our first-time freshmen. As you can see, all of our campuses have increased the average ACT score of students. The total has gone up among all 4 campuses. You can see them, and it's sort of a nice pattern upward to see some rather good scores at the very end now, better than we've seen before. I put this slide up here just to give you a look at what happened last year. As you can see, the enrollment's relatively flat among both for the overall system as well as the campus. These are FTE enrollments, and so a little nudge up in 3 of our campuses. And the next slide will sort of show a depiction as to why. Here's the high school graduation trends and projections over the past few years as well as the next decade. As you can see, we're down in that trough period right now, so we're looking at fewer Missouri high school graduates that are coming, and we're going to see that dip, a little bump next couple years, but then stay down there till about 2024. So that means that we're going to have to look harder for the students in Missouri, those that are state-bound, and increase our recruitment efforts, as I think that all that work is in play. I think you'll notice, too, that some of our institutions are looking outside the state and have done recruiting there to keep our numbers up. So that's really the highlights of the report. Do you have any questions?
Concerning the ACT scores, does that include grad students, what their original ACTs were, or is these are only undergraduates, incoming freshmen or transfer?
First-time freshmen, degree-seeking students, right there.
What about transfers?
Transfers would not be included in this mix. Because this is sort of a reporting thing that we do we use the numbers that we use for IPEDS, which is the national reporting, so to have a common link, that's the cycle that goes in.
I had a question concerning Pell Grants and the number of students that were eligible for Pell Grants. And it appeared to me that the MU campus was substantially lower. Are we doing something to try to improve the application of Pell Grant eligible students to the MU campus? I can't find my page right now.
Is that in the scholarship, a later section of the meeting? Financial aid, is that in the financial aid section?
It will be, yes.
Okay.
I think Brian has it.
Oh, So I'm getting on the wrong vice president, is that right? Okay.
Yeah. So we thought it'd make more sense.
But that's an awesome question, and I know Brian will be delighted to answer for
Well,
you.
I think it's, and that goes back, coming from an area of the state that's disadvantaged, I think that we need to be seeking out at all of our campuses, the kids that have the really great ACT scores that also are Pell eligible.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think we fall down at that. So there's my comment. Excuse
There's
me.
a heads up, Brian.
And I would agree with Chair Cups that it's a rural issue, and some people don't understand that it's a rural and urban issue. It's not a dichotomy. I come from a very small town. We have the same issues, whether it's in rural Missouri or urban Missouri.
Absolutely. We see that in healthcare, too. Okay, thank you.
Doctor, let me ask one other question. I noticed on that chart about public high school graduates, and you're talking about, this is just Missouri though, right?
Yes, that's correct.
For the next several years?
Correct.
And the fact that we might have to go outside and so forth? I mean.
Yeah, we'll have fewer graduates to pick from.
Would that be a national trend though? I mean, would that be all the, let's say the states around us, would they have the same kind of a graph?
I would suspect that would be the case, but I can check that out if you're interested. I can't say definitively, but I suspect that's the case. I'm looking to see if any of our enrollment. Oh, okay.
Hi, Jennifer Neighbors from Jersey, DC. And it is the case that many of the states in the Midwest, Kansas as an example, Illinois is growing, but Kansas is declining. And so it's kind of hit or miss which states are increasing in their high school graduation population. The majority of them in the Midwest are increasing similar.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Are there any other questions? Dr. Graham?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Dr. Not Doctor, but Steve Knorr, Vice President of University Relations. And Steve, if you come forward.
He's there.
There he is.
You're here, okay. You're on.
Curator Snowden, thank you. I've seen a doctor once, but. So today, let me just make sure there we go. We know that our 4 campuses at the UM system serve all 6 million Missourians of this state and do a great job doing it each and every day. We have a number of different constituents that we serve: urban, rural, young, elderly, Fortune 50 companies, small startups, alumni, donors, faculty, staff, legislators, really all Missourians. I believe they all have a common purpose, and we all want the very best for this great state, our great institutions that serve this state. Each of us may come with a bit of a different perspective. Maybe it is to boost the state's economy, deliver excellent health care to our citizens, produce ideas and innovations of tomorrow, or just as important, helping solve the state's pressing problems. We've had some challenging times lately, but I'm a strong believer that the University of Missouri system, the state, and really the future of my kids and all children of the state of Missouri are going to be better off for getting through our current trials. I also believe that you learn more and become better in life when your mettle is really tested. So how are we going to move forward, and what do we need to do? We need to rebuild trust and confidence, and you've heard President Middleton say that several times. We need to show transparency and produce results and be accountable. Keep living out the mission of our great university and be united and unified from bottom up and top down. I want to share a quote with you from a letter that came to the President's office recently from a parent in Illinois. In my assessment, you've broken the trust relationship between university students, parents, and without trust, there's nothing in a relationship and a partnership that can last. Pretty tough. But building trust and confidence affects our entire university family, including students, faculty, staff, alumni, donors, parents, members of the federal and state delegations, and all of our friends of the university. So we're going to execute a plan, and the the Office of University Relations, let me go back here, is looking at 4 key areas: internal, external, constituent relations, and government relations. Internal audiences through our increased level of communications by emails and meetings with university groups to become acquainted with the president a little bit better. Our external audiences through one-on-one interviews with local and national media outlets and key messages and priorities of President Middleton during his interim presidency. Constituent communications with friends groups, Missouri 100, Friends of the President. I saw Dudley McCarter here earlier, tri-chair of the Missouri 100, and had a chance to visit with him briefly. And the government relations team is actively reaching out to legislators to hear their concerns and working with President Middleton to have meetings to reestablish those relationships on a go-forward basis. Internally, we must inform our greatest ambassadors, our faculty, our staff, and our students on what our message is moving forward. To do this, we are constantly communicating by email and through the President's blog with our staff, faculty, and students, through the President's, to let them know what the President is doing weekly to meet with groups and to start the phase of rebuilding some trust. Some examples include a Thanksgiving message thanking each member of the university family for their hard work and dedication to the university, a President's blog that archives all of the communications, including statements and news releases, links of all of the stories covered in the media, internal communications from the President since his appointment. In addition, the President has met with university groups made up of faculty, Intercampus Faculty Council, the UM Staff Advisory Council, students, to listen and hear from them. Externally, we must communicate with our friends groups and other community leaders on what we're doing. Specifically, with our constituent groups, President Middleton has talked with Missouri 100 tri-chairs together, and they plan to hold regional meetings by phone and have conversations with curators and others in the Missouri 100 members about the progress moving forward and answering all the questions this advisory group may have. He met recently with the Friends of the President's group earlier this week to talk from a community standpoint on how we all can collectively work together to become more inclusive, diverse institution for our state. Also, since taking office just a short month ago, President Middleton has had the opportunity to sit down with 14 media outlets, 9 newspapers, 3 TV stations, and 2 radio stations, one-on-one, to help tell the story of just how he intends to move the university forward. As you can see, he's getting the message out, and we hope effectively. I thought it'd be important to share a clip with you that was recently on one of the newscasts.
My number one priority is to restore confidence and trust in the university. I mean, these recent experiences understand caused a great deal of concern amongst our students, our faculty, our staff, legislators, alums, donors. I've heard from all of them. And there's a good deal of uncertainty about where we are as a university. There's a good deal of concern about, can they trust the current set of interim leaders to really move the institution forward? So my primary responsibility is to restore that trust and to instill a sense of confidence that we are still the University of Missouri system. We are still educating students. We are still conducting research. We are still a premier institution of higher education. And that won't change.
We're working hard to be more transparent as an organization. All of our audiences have had opportunities and increased communications in order to see the President and hear his message. And in terms of transparency, we are giving people the information they're requesting. This slide shows part of that transparency and being accountable to the citizens of the state. It's important that the state's land grant public research university be open about our day-to-day activity, and most recently, we've experienced an unprecedented influx of inquiries that have utilized the Sunshine Law. With the influx of communication, I can assure you we are giving as much information as we ever had to be transparent. To date, we've received 648 requests since January 1, compared to 476 requests last year and 326 requests in 2011. That's a 73% year-over-year increase from 2014. To put this into perspective, this equals 139 pages of sheets of paper, or 46 feet of paper stacked up high, quite a bit. Our custodian of records had to coordinate with more than 140 employees across all 4 campuses, spending countless hours compiling this data. We understand the importance of all of this, and we're committed to doing the work that needs to be done to ensure that we are transparent as possible. These inquiries have come from media, commercial entities, general public, legislators, etc., and have hit on a number of issues, including research papers, procurement contracts, police reports, financial reports, employment contracts, and so on. However, we don't just sit and wait on a sunshine request to get our word out. As an example, next you'll hear from Vice President Burnett about the efficiencies and effectiveness report, in which he gives us another great opportunity to share the good work being done system-wide. Finally, on the government relations front, the university government relations team on both the federal and the state side have been hard at work. By the end of next week, President Middleton or someone on our government relations team will have reached out to all of our congressional members in Washington, D.C. and in Jefferson City. We've either had the opportunity to talk to them in person or by phone. We've had the phone firmly planted to President Middleton's ear. I think he'll attest to that. Again, we are listening and answering questions as we prepare for the start of the new legislative session in January. And this constituent group is the same as the others. We must be transparent, accountable, and deliver results. We plan to continue this practice each and every day. Now, a quick update on the state budget picture as we come to the end of the year. We ended fiscal year 15 with a growth rate of 8.8%, stronger than 4.6% that the budget was built on. So there was a carryover of $335 million in funds to be forwarded to this year. In fiscal year 16, the budget is built on a 3.6% growth, but the consensus revenue estimate is expected to be adjusted this month to a higher number. We know that the year-to-year growth so far for this year and after November was at 4.2%. The governor's had to restrict funds in several lines because of a tobacco settlement legal claim that costs the state nearly $50 million. We've had also received news that the tax amnesty proposal that was passed by the legislature last year is a little bit weaker than normal, or than expected. It's at $12 million right now instead of the $60 million expected. And meanwhile, we keep an eye on the budget items that must be funded out of supplemental, which will eat up most of the fiscal year 16 growth. As a reminder, your budget recommendation for this upcoming year was a 5% core increase to the performance funding, an additional 2% for the increase of the STEM. The governor has announced plans, just as a reminder, to propose a 5% core increase, an additional 1% for STEM. As you can see, it's going to be a big challenge, even in stable legislative environment, to get that increase. After just the first week of bill filing in 2016 legislative session, the government relations team is already tracking 50 bills that would have an impact on the University of Missouri. Just a few examples of that legislation that we are seeing. We'll have a normal operating budget normal operating budget and on capital. General revenue limitation that's going to be on the ballot. There's legislation filed that would enact additional tax cuts. And due to revenue growth, the tax cuts that were passed at the beginning last year are going to be beginning to go into effect in 17 because of the growth. So that will cause a reduction in revenue. We may see language on our budget bills this year that relate to the DACA, which was some language from last year. It's called the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and dealing with tuition rates. And in healthcare, we already have a bill filed that clarifies the full admitting privileges for physicians. We've already have a bill filed related to mental health screening of medical students on our campuses, and we see several financial aid topics again this year, including forgiving loans and Bright Flight and STEM tax credits for scholarships. We also know that many proposals will directly relate to the power that you as a governing board have over the university. For example, we can anticipate legislation in some of these areas. An annual audit of the UM system on a yearly basis by the state auditor. The bill's already been filed. 6 bills have already been filed related to conceal and carry laws of the state, including at least 2 that specifically relate to your ability to regulate conceal and carry on our college campuses. A bill's been filed to have established a review panel made up of business representatives and legislators appointed by the Speaker and President Pro Tem to review teaching waivers for our campuses. There may be legislation related to 10-year review. We can expect legislation on the composition of the Board of Curators, including the diversity of careers, as well as requiring a voting student curator. Recently, there was an article in the St. Louis Business Journal with a headline that read, What's to come next? Dismantle the University of Missouri system? Many of these bills strike at the heart of this board and the governance of this university. We will need to speak clearly and plainly so there is no question about the board's position. I cannot say this strong enough. We as a university must speak with one voice and all be rowing in the same direction. We will have our detractors, and they will be looking for cracks in the dam to further their own agenda. Having a unified leadership around the Board of Curators policy sends the strongest message. To conclude, I'd like to go back where I started. The University of Missouri is the standard bearer for the state. As leaders of this university, we must instill in our constituents the trust and confidence, and we must be accountable and transparent each and every day, so that together we can fulfill our common purpose to provide the very best for this state and for our great institutions. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Steve, let me ask you this. On the transparency piece and accountability, that's up, like you said, in 2 years, like 73% or something to that extent. I mean, it looks like we're spending an awful lot of time and effort and money and staff time just trying to answer all these things. Do you see any relief on that, or do you think it's going to get worse, or how do you view that, and is there anything we can do to alter that aspect?
Curator Snowden, unfortunately, I think that is the trend that we're on. We've checked nationally just to kind of see what some of the other institutions around, universities around the country have faced. They've seen the same thing, a growth and uptick in sunshine requests. And I don't know whether that's a sign of just social media, quite frankly, and dealing with all of the emails and the things like that and having instant information where people then want to inquire on things, or it's just a sign that we're doing a better job, maybe, of actually getting the information out and moving forward. I don't see that trend changing.
I liked your idea about open meetings and the fact that we're accessible at all times to anyone. And I think the most important point you made is the fact that with Jeff City, we're in the crosshairs right now, it seems like. And from the things that have happened in the last few months, it would seem that we need to really concentrate on being a single voice in Jefferson City and having it go through your office rather than having diverse people or individuals going down there talking to these legislators. It seems like we've got to tighten that up, in my opinion. And maybe some of the other curators have a thought too, but that's probably the biggest point.
Well, Curator Snowden, I think you're right. I think that at this point in time, we need to be a unified voice. And I'll just use the conceal and carry. I don't know where all of the campuses are, but if we have 2 campuses on one side and 2 campuses on the other, it puts your staff, your professional staff, trying to represent you in a very difficult situation. And I only use that as an example. We know after having 6 bills, we're probably going to be asked what our opinion is on that, which we don't necessarily have that answer yet, but that's something we're going to have to vet and I think come to some kind of consensus on.
Are there other questions of Steve Canor? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we've got a couple of action items, and the first one is a new degree proposal, an LLM in American law at MU. And if Dr. Graham, if you'll come forward to explain that.
There he is.
Okay. We have 2 degrees to put in front of you today from MU. These are both really interesting degree programs. I've worked with them as they created their proposals, and I think you'll find them to be creative and kind of the smart sort of thing that we'd like to do. The first is a LLM degree in American law, and it's being proposed by our MU Law School. As you probably know, law school enrollments have dropped over the last decade or so, and so when they used to admit classes of roughly 150 or so, now they're admitting about 120. So this program is designed to sort of take advantage of some of that capacity that's available and offer degrees to those people who have law degrees from other countries who are here in the U.S., would like to take the U.S. bar exam. And so they're really taking advantage of capacity that exists. So, you know, it's really, they're very careful to make sure they won't have any negative impact on the regular programs. Students will probably sit in the same classroom in most cases. There's a couple of new courses that will be offered. But they're really going to take advantage, much like they did with the LLM and dispute resolution in terms of the skills set that's available through the faculty. It's a good income source for them. Some of the income will be shared at the provost's office. And so we see this as really a smart move on the part of the law school. It's endorsed by the chancellor and the provost as well as the dean of the law school. So,
Are there any questions, Dr. Graham?
Just for my own edification, the LLM is, first of all, can you just tell us what it is, and then what is the utility of it besides allowing foreign students with JDs to sit for the bar?
that's the main purpose, is allowing the students to have that preparation in order to sit for the bar.
Okay. Will it be offered alone, standalone?
It'll be offered, and I'm looking to Paul, so you might want to step up here in a second to the mic. My sense is it'll be offered in conjunction as part of the way they offer their, so it'll be a separate degree program, yes, but the students will be intermixed with those students that are attending the law school program at Mizzou. Is that correct, Paul?
Yes, thank you. Paul Adhoff with the MU Law School, obviously. I direct our LLM and dispute resolution program and wrote the proposal. The students, to answer a couple of your questions, would be international students who've earned their first law degree, probably practicing law in their home countries, and want to be familiar with the U.S. legal system. That may be that they want to sit for a U.S. bar, but many of them want to just conduct business for either clients in their home country or U.S. Clients who are doing business in their country, and they have to do the back and forth as the legal profession gets more globalized. So we want to prepare for that. And then your other question was if it was a standalone program, and I'm not sure exactly what that means. It is separate from both our JD program and our LLM and dispute resolution, but it's meant to be general enough, give an overview of the U.S. legal system, and then allow students to perhaps specialize in an area of interest like intellectual property or commercial law or employment law, environmental law, something in the U.S. Legal system that particularly interests them.
All right, thank you.
Has the Supreme Court bar examiners, have they approved this for students to take the bar exam?
Yes, prior to this program, actually, we have had some of our LLM and dispute resolution students take the Missouri bar, and the Missouri Board of Law Examiners have some rules on eligibility for the bar exam, and I believe it's 8.07E that has a twofold, either if they're licensed to practice in their home country and in good standing for the last 3 years or something, or the second one is if they come and have at least 24 credit hours in an ABA-approved school, they're eligible to sit for the bar. Missouri is one of 30 jurisdictions in the U.S. that allow foreign-trained attorneys to sit for our bar if they meet certain other requirements.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I'd ask for a motion and a second to approve the proposal for an LLM in American law at MU. Do I hear a motion? Mr. Graham?
It's got to come from the committee, doesn't it, first?
You're on the committee now. You're on the committee.
That's my committee. Yeah, I do. I make that motion.
Second.
I didn't realize it was on both committees.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Cindy, call the roll.
Curator Graham,
Aye.
Curator Snowden,
Aye.
Curator Sparks.
Aye.
Okay, you have all committee votes in favor.
Curator Snowden, do you want to make the motion to the full board?
I make the motion, we approve it.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Cindy?
Curator Cups,
Yes.
Curator Graham,
Yes.
Curator Henriksen,
Yes.
Curator Phillips,
Yes.
Curator Snowden,
Yes.
Curator Sparks.
Yes.
All votes in favor.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dr. Graham.
Yep. Second program is a master's degree in data science and analytics at Mizzou. Once again, this is a very creative program. This is, as you're all aware, you've heard the notion of big data, and there are a lot of tools and analytical techniques that data scientists use. Right now, there's somewhat of a shortage of those types of people that are available for all kinds of needs that we're seeing as we get large data sets and our ability to analyze them. So this is being designed in such a fashion as it's going to be available online and available to students in sort of an executive type format. So the price is a little higher, as would be expected, not as high as an executive MBA program, but yet higher than the standard master's program. And it'll be run through their online program at Mizzou, which allows them to capture those sources of revenue and really pay for it and have the program run and operate without any institutional commitment dollars. So it's really kind of an innovative bootstrapping method. Once again, this program has been reviewed by the provost and chancellor at Mizzou. Another element, and they like the new model that's being developed. Another thing is, if you look at the proposal, you saw that the number of support letters they have from companies that are looking for data scientists, which is really strong, and the advisory board. So it's a really flexible, innovative program that's going to be eligible for students to take all across the region, or the country for that matter. One of the things that they've done, and we've worked with them from the beginning, this is a very collaborative group, and because of the nature of the program and its ability to offer it online, they've reached out to our other 3 campuses. So on this proposal, we'd really like you to approve it to be offered by all 4 campuses. The long-term goal is for the core of the program to be offered by Mizzou in conjunction with partners from the other campuses, but special emphasis areas could be offered by the different campuses. So let's say healthcare out of Kansas City, or maybe security out of St. Louis, where there's a real emphasis. They don't have the expertise necessarily that deep at Mizzou, but by combining it, so they'll get the benefit of both. So it's a launch forward on this kind of adventure where we'd have a program that would be basically available on all 4 campuses by them combining their efforts. So.
Sounds real exciting. Any questions?
I do. I actually work as a data scientist, so I took a keen interest in the materials for this new degree. And there was a really good discussion of the technical skills that they plan to develop in the program, but I think some of the things that have allowed me to be successful are some of those softer skills. So I wanted to ask and confirm that like consulting abilities and teamwork and statistical expertise would be highlighted through the applied projects and other aspects of the program.
That's my understanding as I talked to the folks that built it, because if you'll notice, it's got journalism and other kind of an interdisciplinary program. But I'm going to ask Sean to come up as the author. That's why we have the content experts in the field. He's really the developer of this whole, and a data scientist himself. So can you?
Sure. The program is designed, if you look at and then of course we didn't include the detailed syllabi in the proposal, but each of the syllabi is focused on a case study approach. So each course in the core curriculum, and there are 7, focuses on industry-specific case studies. So we're looking at marketing and communications, we're looking at social media graphs in the database courses. So everything is very centered on the application of things in a business setting. And at the end of the program, there's a capstone project which is designed to bring people from industry in contact with faculty members working with students so that there is a student-faculty-industry partnership in the capstone.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Sean.
I'd like to compliment John and you and the system for using this maybe as a case study. This seems like it's the perfect kind of course or program, degree for the 4 campuses to share in, and I hope in a year or 2 you can come back and report to us more of the costing of it, the sharing, and the extent to which we've really had an interrelationship between the campuses. It
Yeah.
really looks like.
Hank and I talked about this, and when we met with these guys, we said this is the group, so thank you for appreciating that. Okay?
Anyone else? May I have a motion and a second, new degree proposal for MS Data Science and Analytics at MU?
I move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Cindy, would you call the roll?
Curator Graham,
Yes.
Curator Snowden,
Yes?
Curator Sparks,
Yes.
all committee votes in favor.
I'd move the approval of the new degree.
Second.
Cindy, would you call the roll?
Curator Cups,
Yes.
Curator Graham,
Yes.
Curator Henriksen,
Yes.
Curator Phillips,
Yes.
Curator Snowden,
Yes?
Curator Sparks,
Yes.
all votes in favor.
Okay, thank you very much.
Or a motion to adjourn the committee?
So moved.
Second.
Curator Graham,
Yes.
Curator Snowden,
Yes?
Curator Sparks.
Yes.
Okay. All votes in favor.
Why don't we take a 5-minute break and reconvene in 5 minutes? Very promptly. Prompt 5 minutes. Finance Committee?
Mr. Chairman, the Finance Committee has 4 information items and no action items today. The first is the FY 2015 Efficiencies and Effectiveness Report. Vice President Brian Burnett will review the report and answer any questions.
Well, good afternoon, members of the board. I'm pleased to present to you the 2015 Efficiencies and Effectiveness Report. We will start with some landscape of higher education across the U.S. and why we need to continue to function and look this way to function effectively. We'll also talk a little bit about the current state of the University of Missouri and its challenges, and we'll look at how we've stepped up to meet this challenge of tough financial conditions for our campuses. We continue to manage through challenges to find cost savings and efficiencies. We're beginning to bridge the gap on shortfalls in state funding, and state appropriations have actually increased last year over 2014, and based upon the university hitting our performance measures. And just a reminder to the board and to those that are in the audience, we are looked at as one system, so all 4 campuses in terms of graduation rates, retention rates, degrees produced, performance on professional exams, it's all rolled up as one system. We are viewed as one system for performance measures. What's interesting is someone still second year here now, my sophomore year with the University of Missouri, is we're benchmarked against the top third of the public doctoral granting institutions in the U.S., meaning we have to beat those benchmarks. But as you're all, I think, keenly aware, we're funded in the lowest quintile. So we're funded in the lowest quintile of our peers, yet we continue to operate and perform on key performance outputs in the top third of those we compete with. I think that's a testament to the people of the University of Missouri, to the staff, to the leaders, to the people on the ground who are doing the work. And we'll talk a little bit more about that today. So if there's some good news to share with you today, one, we've got some good news about some of the work being done on our campuses, but also this gap. We showed you this gap a year ago at this meeting. The gap was 28%. This year, the gap's 17%. We're actually making progress because why? The state was reinvesting in public higher education last session. So the gap has shrunk. That's a good news piece. The 17% gap in combined tuition and state appropriations revenue between 2001 and 2014 in real terms represents the efficiencies that the university has had to find over that period. In nominal terms, the university receives approximately the same amount of revenue on a per student basis as we did in 2001. Let me say that again. On a nominal basis, we receive the same revenue per student that we did 15 years ago. The only way you can figure this out is to do things more efficiently and do things better. So there's still a challenge and pressure to try and close the gap. We've shown you this chart before as well. We continue to make strides reducing our operating expenses while increasing the number of degrees awarded. Awarded degrees across our 4 campuses went to over 18,000 in fiscal year 15, an increase of almost 7,000 degrees per year from 15 years ago. And the actual operating expense per degree declined again in fiscal year 15 to a nearly $17,000 drop since 2001. So you're turning out more degrees for the state of Missouri for less cost than you did it in 2001. So how have we done this? So this is an annual report, started well before I arrived here, but what we try to do is capture some of the key things that we've done. There's efficiencies going on all over the campuses, all over the system, looking for ways to continue to be more effective at what we do, spend the money we have wiser. But let's talk about just some of these things that we can report in this next round. And we reported on a big list like this last year. So within academic affairs, online intercampus course sharing has begun and in earnest. They've increased the course options for students. It utilizes specialized faculty across our campuses. To date, we have 67 shared courses with a total of 127 students enrolled from other campuses within our system. It provides a tremendous model for course sharing. So this is, again, the strength of our system working together, where a special faculty on one campus can deliver a program online to other campuses. The Mid-Missouri Custom Network Health Plan. This was the work of both Vice President Betsy Rodriguez and Associate Vice President Kelly Stuck and their staff to work with MU Health. And you saw the numbers earlier today from CEO Mitch Wasden of MU Health. But how do we drive more of our employees in our system to be customers of our healthcare system? It's very efficient, particularly in Mid-Missouri, for the folks that work in Columbia and the surrounding area. But we have very efficient plans, and when we benchmark our health plans, a recent study showed that we were about 20% more efficient than the U.S. and industry average in healthcare plans. Part of that is working with our own healthcare system, and this allows us to collaborate with them to lower healthcare costs for our employees. Another example of the university working together. Internal audit. This board a year ago today made a decision to move to an in-source model after almost 2 decades of outsourcing it. The bottom line is we will increase coverage, as you know and you've seen in the audit plan, by 2 to 3 times across this system that spends $3 billion for essentially the same money we were already spending. So while this did not have a direct dollar savings, it's absolutely an effective way to use the limited resources we have. And we continue to look, and the campuses, when we move to this model, are finding it an incredible resource for us to turn to quickly when problems arise. We also, I should say, are working on the last bullet there, recruiting interns through our business schools on our campuses to train them in internal audit. We see it's a great training ground to enter financial services and higher education. So we're working on our first group of interns to join this new division. Also within the finance system, we did a number of process improvements over the last year. We reduced our modifications of our IT systems by 58% when we upgraded our PeopleSoft system. We also changed and went to an electronic effort verification report. It replaces our paper application and adds capability to route, track, and store electronic signatures. We're reducing paper usage. This allows for electronic routing, transparency, and storage of electronic signatures and validation for over 13,000 forms annually across our system. In our supply chain, we are one of the few universities in the country that has both supply chain or procurement combined of our 4 campuses with our health system. They had a supply chain value analysis program, continues to save costs and add to the bottom line of the MU health system. Actual savings this year were $7.3 million versus a goal of 5.5. So they beat their goal again of driving down the cost per case. And that translates directly to the bottom line of MU Health, which allows them to continue to invest in the School of Medicine and the School of Health Professions and the nursing school at MU. We estimate a total savings that the supply chain has worked on over the last year of $20 million across our entire enterprise of what we would have otherwise spent on necessary materials and supplies. I will tell you that this is also something we're particularly proud of in the last year. Supplier diversity spend on design and construction across our 4 campuses. On the left is the percentage that were either MBE or WBE, women-owned businesses or minority-owned business participation on our 4 campuses, and we're getting ready to move towards about $200 million in capital across our 4 campuses. You can see that all of our campuses made notable increases. Kansas City improved on its already strong performance. They were already a leader within our group, but in total, the University of Missouri will spend $36 million of $164 million in design and construction with diverse businesses across the state of Missouri. This didn't happen by accident. It took leadership, it took determination, and it took great leaders on our campuses to know that this is an important piece of the University of Missouri to continue to be sensitive to this issue. Streamlining scholarships. Missouri S&T down in Rolla, they centralized and streamlined their application process for scholarship, resulting in savings of $900,000. It takes the burden off their academic units, but it allows for them to have input in awarding these scholarships, and it's been a tremendous streamlined approach. In fact, Chancellor Schrader and I talked about it, and hats off to that campus for putting this together. This continues as you start to build a culture of looking for these efficiencies. We've had this one in the queue for about 11 months because she said, like, I've got one for you for the 2015 report. It's awesome. So we've been having this one on the list, and we're very proud, and congratulations to S&T for this work. With MU, under the leadership of Vice Chancellor Rhonda Gibler and others in her staff, they created a new portal for contract activities, reducing processing time by 42%. They also launched an efficiency initiative in the areas of finance and HR. They actually have a gift from a donor to help them improve their efficiencies, and they're embarking on that process, and they're doing an entire review of an entire college or unit to find efficiencies through a gift of a donor. It's a tremendous gift because that leverages resources back into the units on the campus. And I think MU should be very proud of this process. Could be a model for our other campuses as well. Back to S&T, for those who are newer to the board, you may not know we went to a geothermal heating system and cooling system for that campus. We're now starting to see the results. It reduced their annual energy use by 50%. Reduced carbon dioxide emissions by 25,000 tons per year, and it cut the water usage by 10%. All at the same time saving them money and getting rid of a whole bunch of built-up maintenance and repair problems across the campus. It's a great story. I think I skipped a slide there. Here's what I was looking for. It replaced a 40-year-old system, and you can see what their energy costs are doing at Missouri S&T. This was a tremendous partnership. Vice Chancellor Walt Branson on the S&T campus with a lot of system staff in the finance area looking for the tax credits. We were able to get some tax credits. We took those out to the private sector because obviously tax credits aren't valuable to the Board of Curators, they're valuable to others. So we monetize those with partners in Columbia to help us make this project go, and it's been a tremendous addition for, I think, the S&T campus. And given the engineering nature of that campus, it's just a great model, a learning model for the students, and yet also showing the stewardship for our campuses. So the way forward, while we've done a great deal of things in the last year, 2 years, 5 years, even 15 years, as I suggested, there's more work to do and plenty of opportunity. The good news is we have a plan and we're in a position to do so. So I would say to you culturally, I think finding efficiencies is now expected. It's not, they all know that there's a report like this coming a year from right now. So we are continuing to look, where are those initiatives where we can do things better? Where can we spend money more effectively? We have to be focused on meeting our financial needs while maintaining a high quality in our research and our instruction for our students. And our environment will continue to change around us, we know that, but we have increased efficiency demands we know are not going to go away no matter what happens. So I would just say to you, to the members of the board, we remain focused on doing this, especially in finance, HR, information technology. Over the coming year, we're going to continue to look at shared services, policy effectiveness review. Are our policies making any sense in the current environment we're in? Are they making us less efficient? Process redesign and automation. What things can we do differently than, I think the buzzword is we're not going to come back and say, well, we've always done it that way. It's just not acceptable in the climate we're in. So it's a continuous search for better ways to support the mission of our campuses and our health system. So in closing, I would say cost management efforts will continue at our university as the institution works to make its strategic plan a reality, both system-wide and on the campuses. Additional cost savings will be required to refocus resources into our highest priority areas as defined by our strategic plans. And I'm happy to take any questions from the members of the board about this report.
Any questions?
Good report.
Exciting stuff, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we'll move on to the financial aid report and Chairman Cupp's questions.
Well, if I can walk through this report, we can talk about a number of things. This report, candidly, I will just tell you, we took a different look at this report because there were a number of questions from curators, both new curators and curators who have been on the board for quite some time, about various aspects, whether it was metro rates, conversion to residency status. We made a promise, we'll boil all those into one big report. So what was last year a 10-page slideshow, this year you received about an 84-page report with glossary of terms and process flows, probably more detail than you ever wanted to know as curators. But what I will share with you is we took probably the last 6 months working with our campus registrars, financial aid officers, enrollment management folks, working with our system staff, Cuba Plain and Carla Dowd, and they pulled this report together to get it formatted similarly. And I can certainly talk about the summary data, but if you have specific campus questions, I'm going to rely on the chancellors or folks that they have in the audience to go through it. So with your permission, I'd like to walk through just some of the highlights of the financial aid report. So understanding the role of financial aid, part of our mission is to provide opportunities for low and middle income students. That's why we have financial aid budgets funded from all different types of sources. We also want to shape our enrollment by providing diversity and high performing students into our campuses. High performing students bring that intellectual curiosity that our faculty look for in the classroom and in the research labs. We also candidly need positive impact on net tuition revenue. As we become more tuition dependent, we need to make sure our financial aid policies are complementary to that need. And again, as I said before, many of these pieces of the report were in specific questions from curators that came over the last several months. Just a reminder about the color of money. We talked about this at the board development session, talked about this a little bit with Curator Sparks in her orientation, but just a reminder to the board that not all money is equally situated when you fund higher education. In the green is where our state appropriation and our tuition and fees come, and that becomes our general revenue and really is the operations, and that's where you do your teaching, your research that's funded by the campus, and all of your support. All of your academic support is funded from this bucket. and it is the most valuable bucket because you can do anything lawful with that money. Emphasize anything lawful. Out to the right, and this is in a stoplight, so the green is the least externally constrained. We also, as you heard earlier today, we run a number of businesses that are here because we have an academic institution. The biggest one of those is MU Healthcare. It's run as an auxiliary, and they have charges for services, and when they get to their net bottom line, they're able to provide support to the operations, like you heard Mitch talk about today, to the medical school. They also pay overhead back to the campus because we have some supervision and costs that come with that. So that you have to be careful about how you use those funds, so you're reinvesting in those businesses. This would also be our residential life. This would be our bookstores. And in the case of Mizzou Athletics, would be in this one as well. Out to the right, when you get gifts, roughly 90 to 95% of the gifts that we receive are restricted for or designated by the donor to use in a certain way. Very few gifts come in terms of would be unrestricted. So we put those over in the red because they're externally constrained by the donor. And likewise, when you go out to the far right, grants and contracts, most notably our federal grants, they don't just hand us $1 million and say, go do whatever you like with it. There's a lot of regulations and compliance around that. Now, when we spend those grants and contracts, the facilities and overhead is reimbursed back to the campus and flows back to the green bucket. Why? It's the notion of trying to reimburse the educational enterprise for this. So this is just a reminder of the different types of money when we talk about it. Well, we put it in this report, how does it flow in financial aid? Well, I would suggest to you that every one of those forms of money somehow finds its way into financial aid at different levels across our 4 campuses. Most notably on the right, we take a portion of our state support and tuition and fees, and we provide merit and need-based aid from the institution. So some of it comes out of the operations bucket, the green bucket. Likewise, our residential life, athletics, they are giving scholarship aid in terms of merit aid for athletes or in terms of paying residents assistance to help them manage the dormitories and the residential life buildings we have. So there's money coming in there. Likewise, we have gifts that come in to help with scholarships out to the right. We also have grants and contracts that provide scholarship help. We have loan funds, and then we have agency funds, like when the state of Missouri gives us some of the state-based financial aid. Those are all restricted out in the right buckets. So this is just a kind of a take on the whole institution. You can see that there are multiple sources of financial aid for each of the campuses, and coming with differing levels of restriction, where the institution will have the most ability to fashion what they need to do over on this side of the spectrum versus that side of the spectrum. Does that make sense? This is a slide the curators have seen many times, and why is this important? Net tuition and fees is now the primary operating resource for our 4 institutions. Those lines crossed back in 2010. So for multiple generations, the state was the largest supplier of operations funds for the University of Missouri. That has changed in this generation in 2010 when tuition and fees, as you know, have replaced state support. Enrollment has also grown. This shows you that MU is the top line since '01, so this is 15 years worth of data. All of our campuses have grown, but MU has led the way among the 4 campuses. So that also brings the need for financial aid. Catch up here on my... Interesting in this report is the greatest growth has been in non-resident students. So since the fall of '08, these are the various changes in non-resident students. Why? The campuses can bring in higher paying non-resident students to help supplement what the state's not able to do for resident students of the state of Missouri. This model is being replicated by most public higher education institutions across the U.S. The going for the full pay non-resident students that can come in and help subsidize your in-state students at a public university like the University of Missouri. The other piece we'd like to share with you is there really is only 2 types of aid. It's either need-based or merit. Every dollar of financial aid fits in one of those 2 buckets. You may not think of it in those terms, but if it's not something around the student's financial need, then they're giving aid for some meritorious, whether it's music ability, scholarship ability, athletic ability, those all fit over on the merit side. So when we look at merit versus need-based, you need to know it really falls into one of these 2 buckets. How does it work? We were going to give you a quick high-level overview. There's a lot of detail in the report we gave you, but in just simple terms, we look at the cost of attendance. This is the way schools do this. And you subtract out the expected family contribution after they file their FAFSA, or their federal aid, their student aid. It's a big, long form. There's talks in Washington about shortening it, but it's a very big look, and that gets to each student's individual financial need. And this might vary. Cost of attendance in some cases varies by the degree program they're in. If they're in a higher cost degree program, their cost of attendance is higher. Okay? Also, expected family contribution can vary if you have 4 or 5 children in college at the same time. Even high earners could have financial need because they have multiple kids in college. So all those things are taken into account. Whoops, that thing's going quick. So once you get to financial need computation, the way our campuses do this in form of stacking is you take their financial need and they begin by whatever federal and state grant need aid it's available to them. They'll apply that first to their need. Secondly, they'll look at state and institutional merit aid. Third, institutional need aid, and this may change a little bit, but generally this is the process. And then if there's still need to be met, they'll look at loans as last resort. And then at the bottom line, unmet need, and this is where students either find work or take out loans or that type of thing. But the order is try and use grants, federal grants, state grants, institutional grants before you get into loans. That's generally the process of how aid's awarded. And every student is unique because of their cost of attendance, because of the program, because of their individual financial situation. An interesting part when we put this report together that it took me a minute to wrap my head around is a significant amount of our merit-based aid actually goes to meet students' need. So while it might be awarded on a meritorious basis, it's also helping them meet need. And it takes a minute to think that through. But if you look at MU, 77% of their merit aid is actually helping meet students' need. 65% at Kansas City, 81% at S&T, 77% at UMSL. And part of that is just as the economy and the shift to tuition being a bigger piece of the funding of our operations, the cost of going to college, not only in Missouri, but across the country, continues to increase. So that's just a very interesting piece that while it might be merit aid, it's also meeting need. And these are all in your report. We won't spend a lot of time on this, but you can see back in 2008, this is MU's number, that they had about $250 million of tuition. The gray bar, is the net tuition. The orange bar is the scholarship allowance. And since 2008, as we put these data together consistently for each of the 4 campuses, net tuition and fees for MU since 2008 have grown by 65%. The scholarship allowance has also grown by 65%. So even though they have more tuition and more students, they're in the ballpark of awarding about the same percentage of their net tuition in terms of scholarship. It's a little bit different for the other campuses at UMKC. They've grown net tuition and fees by about 45% over the last 7 years, while the scholarship allowances have only changed by about 14%. I would submit, and UMKC can comment on that there's a different program mix at UMKC with the professional schools and that type of thing, and they don't have the big resident undergraduate population that MU does. So again, as we said at the board development session, if you've seen one University of Missouri campus, you've seen one University of Missouri campus. So again, we're trying to put these into different contexts and help you understand. And then for S&T and UMSL, where the scale could be the same, you can see S&T has grown their net tuition and fees by 88%, tremendous growth over the last 7 years for that campus. Scholarship and allowances have grown by 65%. That's substantial over the last 7 years. And here at UMSL, net tuition and fees over the last 7 years have grown by 24%, while their scholarship allowances have grown by 69%. That might seem real out of whack compared to the other 3, but they were the lowest of the 4 schools in the amount that they were devoting to scholarships. And so they're kind of catching up to the other 3 campuses in our system. This chart here on, and I'm sorry that it's on page 2-99, but I thought we'd share this one with you. And the scale, we had to make them different for Columbia compared to the other 3 campuses. But this chart shows the award the aid awarded by documented student need. The blue bar is aid recipients with documented need. The orange bar is aid recipients that don't have need. And the green bar are the percent of full pay students. So you can see that MU has a greater percentage of full pay students than the other 3 campuses in our system. And again, I think it's very interesting as we start to put these data together about those trends and that type of thing. You have to really look at the context of each one of our campuses. There's not, I can't give you that the University of Missouri should have this policy. They're serving different populations, and these data bear that out.
Did you say that MU has a greater percentage?
Yes, of the ones with unmet, in the green bar here at 24%.
No, the full pay. On
Full pay. So the green bar are the full pay students that don't have documented need and are receiving no aid. It's 13% at Kansas City, 11% at S&T, and 12% at St. Louis.
Got it.
So that's what this chart's trying to illustrate for you, is the different types of students that are attracted to the 4 campuses.
Wouldn't it seem like the Rolla campus at S&T would be closer to Columbia than the 2 metropolitan areas? It's not.
Well, I think Chancellor Schrader could talk about that. They're more built like MU, but I think that it's just the scale and the type of program array that MU has is just very different than what S&T has. Chancellor Schrader, would you like to comment on Curator Snowden's?
You're right, Curator Snowden, in that we very often, the 2 more rural, traditional student age campuses tend to mirror each other, while our 2 metropolitan research universities often look alike. In this instance, I think it has been happened over the years that we have many first-generation students coming in through the Missouri S&T campus, and we very often have a good number of students in the lower socioeconomic classes. Mainly, it is an institution where people come to transform their lives, their opportunities, and the opportunities for their families as well. So in this instance, I don't think that due to the types of programs we offer and their the opportunities to move forward with their careers, we see a difference here than the more comprehensive programming that's offered on the Zoo campus.
Again, as we compiled this report, the data became very interesting to us, and we thought, you really have to look at it just as we talked about the board development section, campus by campus. We are absolutely part of this strong University of Missouri family, but they're all in different histories, they're all in different program mixes, they're serving different populations, and this chart illustrates that, I think, pretty vividly for you.
Brian, when you talk about the merit versus need, you indicate that merit goes to meet need. I understand that, but if the true merit dollars as compared to the true need dollars, how does that break down in dollars?
It's in the report. It's different by each campus. For instance,
just roughly, is one higher always than the other?
So institutional aid, let's just talk about institutional aid, not all of our donor gifts or that. In a handout I'm about to give you, in 2014-15, our merit-based aid system-wide was about $200 million, and our need-based aid was $20 million. So, but again, a bunch of that, between 60 and 70% is also meeting needs. So it's different by each campus. We've got some data to show you. It's in the report, but it's also in a quick thing we're going to give you at the end of this presentation. So you need to understand the context of each campus and what they're trying to do to shape their enrollment, to meet their targets for enrollment, both non-resident and resident, diversity and inclusion, that type of thing as well. So we'd have to talk campus by campus, but I can tell you, we can roll it up and tell you what the number is. But from an institutional basis, we spend a lot more creating need-based or creating merit-based aid than need out of our green bucket. There's a lot of need-based aid coming in the form of Pell from the federal government. There's a lot from the state, not a lot, but some from the state. So trying to work those together, but we can certainly, I think the report will help you with that. So in summary, discount rates, we talked about this a number of meetings, where the ratio of unrestricted financial aid to gross tuition revenue varies by student level and residency across our 4 campuses. And the discount rates for Missouri residents, our largest student population, appear reasonable compared to the peers, to those near peers we talked about. And we can walk through that. I would also point out that the question about debt comes up, and it's at the end of the report. We've shown you this, so you should know not all of our students graduate with debt. And on page 2-49, figure 42 of your report, I know there's lots of pictures in this report, but it shows you by campus how many students graduate without debt. And it varies by campus. MU has the most students that graduate without debt, and that makes sense given the number of full-pay students you saw on that chart. But for those that graduate with debt, the national average is that black line. 3 of our campuses, actually, those that graduate with debt, even with that change over the last 7 years, they're below the national average. So those that have debt, these are the numbers. And this is students that start with us as full-time freshmen, and this would not count any loans they took out at another institution before transferring in. The only one that's above is UMSL. I think that's a function that a lot of students here end here after lots of time at community colleges. Tom and I have talked about that, but I don't know, Chancellor George, if you wanted to just mention, I mean, you're not way above the line, but you're the campus above the line, and that's one of the things I think you're trying to solve with some of your institutional aid.
And just one quick comment. I mean, the average salary for our students is around $50,000, and the family income at Mizzou, it's like $110,000. So our students are just by far the neediest students on average.
So when you look, and that's in the report as well, and so we didn't want to go into every detail of the report, but we thought this was an important slide to show that the institutional aid policies that our campuses are employing are keeping us at or below the national average in most cases, with the exception of here at UMSL.
Clarification, you said this only includes the first time?
The data we have wouldn't be students that have loans from other institutions, meaning they started with us as full-time, first-time freshmen.
Okay, because that's a very small population at UMSL as well. So this is a number reflective of about 500 students a year, and the need of the very few students that we actually get as first-time freshmen. Clarification. So
if there's any questions about, we do have folks here from UMSL that can address it, but I do think it is a bit unique here.
Just clarifying, so I understand what you're saying is that the debt at UMSL only reflects the debt that was incurred while the student is at UMSL.
Because that's what we know when they leave.
All right.
The campuses really aren't aware of debt they may have taken on at another place. You could, but this is the debt we can track.
Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I got it.
They might have other loans outside what we've offered.
Can you explain why S&Ts has gone down? Chancellor, I'm sure you'd like to, wouldn't you?
I would love to share that with the board of Curator Cups. We are in the 3rd year of a grant from Missouri Department of Higher Education to increase the financial literacy of our students. And we were able also to counsel students with managing their finances, and also we assist them with completing the FAFSA as well. So starting with our FY 15 undergraduate students, we also initiated a social media campaign to help them take advantage of the financial literacy support that we offer. So we counsel our students to understand what it means when they are taking out those loans. And we work very hard to find alternate opportunities to meet the need that they have, so that they don't first jump to the loan without understanding the ramifications.
And I think Curator Cups, if you look at page 2-49, the number of students graduating without debt at S&T, has gone up. Graduating with no debt, is 17 to 27%. So again, they're making progress. They're behind the other campuses in that metric, but they've improved over the last 7 years. The number of students graduating with no debt has gone from 17% to 27%. We just didn't have it in the slide deck here. Again, this slide is a companion really with this one, in my opinion.
Is there any hope of getting that program to the other campuses?
Question.
Those are grants that the other campuses could apply for as well. And we'd be happy to share what has been successful on our campus.
Thank you.
So finally, as I've said, just a summary, each of the campuses uses their financial aid in different ways to achieve strategic goals. And at the end of your report, beginning on page 2-55, each of the campuses was allowed to add their own perspective about how they use financial aid to shape their enrollment, the goals they're trying to meet, and you'll see that there are 4 separate sections of campus perspectives at the end of the report that were authored by the campuses and added. Like I said, we also put a glossary at the end of this. We put a flow chart that is more than you ever wanted to know about how financial aid works, but we wanted to share this. This is a very complex, and we've worked hard to try and boil it down to make it understandable and see this tool that's in the toolbox for us as we provide this access for Missourians and others around the country to come to one of our 4 campuses. Again, I would just say to the board, my thanks to dozens of folks across the 4 campuses, the CFOs, and a number of people who spent a good part of, they spent 6 months ago we started this report. So this is the fruits of a lot of work, and I hope it's informative to all of you as board members. I know it's been pretty enlightening and eye-opening for many of us to look at this data in this way.
Chairman Cups, did you get your Pell question answered?
He did during the break, so thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you very much, Brian.
You bet. So my last report is on tuition and fees. This is also an information item. You won't be asked to take any action today. So we thought we'd walk through quickly about tuition and fees. Historically, the system has brought you what the thinking is on the campuses before you're asked to make decisions in the spring timeframe. So this will be for fiscal year 2017. So we're going to set the stage today. We're going to talk about the tuition proposals and other required fees from each of the campuses, where they're heading and thinking about on housing and dining rate. And these could change. So this is just where it was in the last month or so as we were putting all these together. And we'll talk quickly about revenue and cost drivers. So I know you've heard this story, but we won't spend a lot of time at it. State appropriations are below 2001 levels in real and nominal terms. We've had $148 million or a 26% decline in real terms of the purchasing power of our state appropriation. So that's shown in this slide here. And part of the way our campuses have made up for this is growing enrollment. And we've grown enrollment by 39% across our 4 campuses in the last 15 years. Meaning bringing in more revenue, more net revenue to hopefully cover what the state is not able to do for our campuses. The result, state appropriations per FTE student have declined 30% in nominal terms. So the combination of the state support going down while our student population goes up, 30% in nominal terms and 47% in real terms since 2001. So the state support per student is down by nearly 50%. In real purchasing terms, adjusted, of course, for inflation. This slide also, you saw that tuition and fees have replaced state support as the primary resource for the operating budget. And to add to that, Senate Bill 389 effectively limits the increase in tuition and required fees for Missouri undergraduate students to the increase in CPI. As you know, with the continued pressure down on oil, we are expecting, last year we had an inflation rate of 0.8. We're thinking it's a robust 1.0, but we won't know that till mid-January. So I will tell you that this becomes, as we talked about back in the financial aid report before, this is an access and affordability issue for our students. We've held to the concept as system and our campuses that new fee increases must be targeted to strategic areas. We aren't just going to put a new fee in. It has to target certain things and be part of a strategic plan. As you may or may not know, student-faculty ratios, we've talked about this, are also increasing because of the pressures on our campuses. Increased class sizes can impact quality across our campuses. And these issues vary by campus and they vary by program of study. This is a focus of the campus strategic plans in varying degrees. And this is a chart that's, I think, pretty telling since 2002. These are the changes in our student to faculty ratios across our 4 campuses. All have trended up to differing degrees, all have different program mixes, but this is the outfall of that decline of the state support and constraints on your tuition being able to make up some of that cost. The impact on faculty and staff, no surprise here. Our faculty salaries rank near the bottom of their comparator group in key areas. Staff salaries are often significantly below peers in many cases, and it puts increased pressure on recruiting and retaining top faculty to meet our strategic plan goals because we're in a national market to recruit faculty. We're in a national market to recruit faculty across and in our region. Our resident undergraduate tuition and fees are below the average for public doctoral granting institutions, and this is the data. We bring this data to you each year. You can see last year our average change was about 2.2% from fiscal year 15 to fiscal year 16, and in this we show the detail of each one of our campuses. I would tell you UMSL had the implementation of their wellness center fee, which is what drove that number higher, which had been approved by the board in advance of constructing that building. Our 4 campuses' average annual tuition and required fee changes over the 5 years are the lowest in our region. And this graph shows the different states around us, both their 5-year changes and their year-over-year changes. And in the middle, in the colors in the just center right, those are the 4 campuses of the University of Missouri versus these schools surrounding us. So when you think about our state support being 43rd, by the way, we're not 44th. That's another good news thing I forgot, Mr. Chairman. We moved up to 43rd in funding higher education in the latest data from the College Board. Pennsylvania fell behind Missouri.
I want that noted.
That should be one of your accomplishments. You're in review. That absolutely should be one of your accomplishments. We're number 43. But we're also keeping tuition down, in part because Senate Bill 389 and in part because of affordability issues that we just talked about with financial aid. This chart we've shown you previously, but this would show you the minimum semester tuition and required fees at 12 credit hours comparison in the region. And the colors on the right are the 4 University of Missouri schools, and in the other blue bars, these illustrate the schools around us. So we would assert that we're still a good bargain, a good value, given what we're trying to do with many challenges. So, as I said, at least right now, with continued weakness in oil prices, CPI is projected to be a robust 1%. We will bring tuition and fees to a board at a meeting in the spring. And just a reminder, Senate Bill 389 only applies to resident undergraduate tuition and fee charged to all students. So things like supplemental fees are not covered by Senate Bill 389. Likewise, fees that are voted on by students subject to curator approval are not subject to Senate Bill 389's restrictions. As Vice President Knorr talked about in his presentation, the governor asked the leaders of the 4-year schools in our state back in September if they would have 0% increase, he would recommend a 6%. You had originally asked for 7%, as had all the COFI schools. All the 4-year schools asked for a 7% budget increase. It remains to be seen whether the state's going to be able to, and given the environment we're in, do that. But at this point, we're showing 0% for resident undergraduate across our 4 campuses while we wait to see what the governor's proposal is to the legislature. Non-resident undergrad and graduate tuition rates are proposed to increase by CPI, anywhere from CPI of 1% to 6%, as shown in this table. Graduate nursing at UMKC will increase by 12.5% for residents, 5% for non-resident. This is the second and last year of a phased-in new tuition rate that was approved by the board last February of 14. So other required fees are anticipated to increase by the CPI, or 1%. We will also be showing you professional school tuition rates. Increases range from CPI to 6%. Most of these changes are made based on the needs of the individual programs and reflect both market demand and other cost drivers. So these are not subject, again, to Senate Bill 389, but they are subject to market forces. Do you have the right price to be able to attract the students to these programs? Specifically, we'll just do one slide per campus, all the details in your report, but MU is recommending increases in most of their supplemental fees of 3%. They have an arts and science course fee increase of $5 per credit hour. This was year 3 of 4. For new curators, there were some supplemental fees proposed, and the curator said, we'd like you to phase those in over time. This would be year 3 of year 4 of a plan that was approved previously by the board, but they're each subject to their own approval. The College of Business would like to increase its fees by 6.5%, and the nursing school would like to increase its undergraduate course fee by 7%. The demand for both of those programs is extremely high. We had this discussion at the board development session about market pricing for many of our high demand and costlier programs. The academic and funding needs of these two colleges will be important to think about, accreditation, those types of things, and that's why they'd ask you to consider those. Again, you won't be voting on these today whatsoever. For Kansas City, they're recommending supplemental fee increases from CPI to 3% in most cases. They are thinking about a new arts and sciences course fee. That may come off the table, and it just came off the table in the last hour when I was sitting at my table, so we can strike one already. The conservatory course fee is a very small, high-cost program. It's one that the Chancellor Morton has talked with the curators about how do we support that adequately financially. So that'll be up for discussion. An online course fee is in year 2 of 3 that was previously approved by the board. And they're holding no changes in some fees based on some market conditions. So that's a quick summary of UMKC. Missouri S&T is recommending supplemental fee increases as part of a plan to double its rates over a 3-year period. We had an extensive discussion about this at the board development session down in Branson in September. Given the demand and the costs of engineering education on that campus, and candidly, you have to think about if the state can't add state support for each engineering student, they have to do it all on tuition. Think about that for a second. If you're going to add more and more engineering students and the state of Missouri can't afford to give them enrollment funding, then tuition is going to have to be the place that pays for more engineers to get educated at S&T. We had a long discussion about that and with S&T's demand curve, and that's really the big one there. There's a couple others in here, but that's really the big one for Missouri S&T for next year. And then finally, with St. Louis campus, they're considering a $10 arts and sciences advising fee. The business school has a year 1 of 2 or year 2 of 2, I think, of increasing a supplemental fee for the College of Business here. There's also, we're going to talk to you more about their partnership with Washington University in the engineering program and raising that fee. That's continuing to be a budget challenge for this campus about the program with Washington University across town. They're asking for the 2nd year of a nursing undergraduate fee, a social work fee, and restructuring, kind of reformatting their online course fees. But there are other supplemental fees they're proposing to increase at CPI or not increase whatsoever. So we'll bring all that detail for you in the spring. This is just a quick summary. The campuses also have to plan around housing and dining rate plans. This is the summary information that we have right now, somewhere between 1.7 and 3%. Some of these are contracts that they have with food service providers. Some of them are in-house that they just looking at inflationary costs on food and that type of thing. So finally, as you all know, the state appropriations and net tuition are our 2 primary revenue drivers for that green bucket or that operations bucket for our campuses. And new state appropriations will continue to be allocated to the campuses based on the strength of their strategic funding proposals. That's the way the system has worked with the campuses for multiple years. And just a reminder, if we can get a 1% every 1% increase in state appropriations is $4.2 million to the system. So a 3% would be around $12 million. The 6% that the governor would recommend would be around $25 million, which would be extremely helpful to us. Not sure the state's going to have the revenue to be able to support that they talked about back in September. But just a reminder that each 1% is about $4.2 million to our campuses. And then just from a 1% increase in tuition rate, this also shows how much the undergraduate resident would generate about $2.4 million. Undergraduate non-resident is about $1.5 million. This is just a matter of the scale of our resident undergrads across our 4 campuses. So a 1% increase would generate a total of $2.4 million, or about half of what 1% of the state appropriation would do. So let me say that again. A 1% increase in our resident undergraduate tuition will get you about $2.4 million. A 1% increase in our state appropriation gets us $4.2 million. Okay? And you can see that graduate resident and graduate non-resident are even smaller because the populations of those students are smaller on our 4 campuses. The other piece, the professional schools, at least right now, would be around $1 million as proposed. Across our 4 campuses, at least initially, budgets are looking at maybe we might have about a $10 million swing in tuition based on enrollment challenges. And that's not just MU, that's all of our campuses with probably the exception of S&T on enrollment challenges. Finally, for the curators, as we start to put a budget together for fiscal year 17, what you need to know, a 1% increase in salary and wages is roughly $9 million across our system. Not easy to attain. It's roughly equal to a 2% increase in that undergraduate and graduate tuition rates. You really need about 2% just to cover a 1% raise pool for the whole system. And through some tremendous work being done by many people, we are working towards holding the benefit rate flat another year at 27.72%. And we're going to continue to work on with Kelly's leadership and my staff working closely with her, see how long we can keep doing that. The challenge is medical costs and our medical plans continue to go up inside there. So the longer we can hold that flat, the easier it is for our campuses to manage in these challenging financial times. So the next steps are we will review their supplemental fee and tuition requests. That's been delayed a little bit given the changes that have happened over the last 6 weeks. The campus proposals will be refined in January, and at a spring board meeting, and this may be broken up into a couple parts as Curator Henriksen and I have talked, the tuition fee, housing, and dining rates will be coming to you for your approval. I mean, it is one of the foundational responsibilities of the Board of Curators to set these fees for our campuses. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
No questions.
One last thing before we turn over to the last information item. Curator Henriksen had said she'd gone to was it a Rotary Club or something like that?
I get questions quite frequently from local community leaders as what does it cost to go to the University of Missouri? How many students do we have on each campus? And I'm no longer capable of retaining that information.
So we have a little cheat sheet we've built that has all 4 campuses and the health system and consolidated data for the campuses. We used to give these to the board that I worked for previously. Very helpful to put in. They're for the general officers as well, but they're really handy for going to speeches about, and it's things like degrees awarded, financial aid, Curator Graham. It shows institutional need and merit for each campus. The number's right there, total. So we're hopeful this is helpful to you. Back to the transparency piece that Vice President Knorr talked about. We're happy to get more copies of this for you. My thanks to the budget staff working with the campuses to put this together. Again, I hope this is useful to you in your role as curator and useful to the general officers when you're asked to speak about the system, about your individual budgets, that type of thing. So.
Looks very good, Brian. Way more information than I did.
I'm sorry about that. We tried to fit a lot on there and make it a little.
And you have a lot on here.
Yeah, so. Curator Phillips?
I do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
I noticed when you were going through the council's structuring their online fees, I'm curious about, is that subject those are tuition fees, I assume. Is that subject to Senate Bill 389? And are the online fees system-wide being looked at to determine whether whether ultimately, the ultimate question is, will that reduce costs for some of the online programs?
I would have to say it's probably a campus-by-campus piece, and maybe Chancellor George would want to talk about that. I don't believe that these, because it doesn't apply to the entire student body, the online fees are subject to Senate Bill 389, but I can verify that for you.
I assume not. I don't know.
We've approved them in the past. I mean, as course fees, like supplemental fees.
I will tell you that Kansas City has been changing their online course fees to look more like the other campuses. So I think that under Steve Graham's leadership, working across academic affairs of the 4 campuses, Curator Phillips, we've tried to get more consistency across the 4 campuses, especially as they start to share courses, right? Especially as what we talked about in the efficiency and effectiveness report. If they've all got different course fees, it's going to be really complex to tell a student what's going to take a class from another campus online. So I think that under Steve Graham's leadership, we're working at trying to get that consistent, and I can get you some more detail that's not in this report about that before we get to that in the spring.
So a related question is, are the suggested tuition and fee requests that we've just seen campus generated autonomously, or has there been some system input that has moderated the suggestions? In other words, is this really campus-based, or is there some system thought being placed into it?
Not yet.
Not yet, which?
Right, because that was absolutely our plan before the events of the last few weeks. So with the change in president, we had to push those back, and we'll have those discussions with the campus in January. When we brought these to you last December, we had already had those discussions. So just the events that were outside our control prevented that from happening, but we will be talking with each of the campuses about there. So there is what I'm bringing you today is everything the campuses gave to us.
Thanks.
Further questions? Thank you very much, Brian. And the last report from the Finance Committee is Gary Ward, and he's going to give us an update on the MU Master Plan.
Thank you, Curator Anderson. So every 3 years, each campus has to bring to the board their campus master plan. MU last brought our master plan in June 2014. Cynthia's handing out what we handed out at that board meeting in June 2014. For those that were at that board meeting, you may recall that the University of Missouri does our master planning every single year instead of on a 3, 5, or 7-year effort. We do that because we feel like it gives us greater flexibility, and it also keeps our data up to date. So this is the master plan. This is what we showed in 2014. I'm here today to talk specifically about 5 projects we have not previously talked to the board about. Combine these 5 projects will further our teaching and research missions and improve our graduate and family student life. These 5 projects are McKee Hall, Graduate Student Family Housing, School of Nursing, a translational research facility, and new plant growth facilities. While these 5 projects, we've not talked about them before, these are not the only projects that it's a priority to the University of Missouri. For example, you've heard us talk in the past about a School of Music building that we're still interested in doing and still interested in bringing that building forward. We're also talked in the past about a business building, and we will be bringing that building to the board soon for project approval. So in 2009 and 10, MU initiated a space utilization study to determine if our current facilities could support a student enrollment of 38 to 40,000 students. The study looked at 3 specific areas. We looked at classrooms, we looked at faculty space, to be faculty office space or meeting space with faculty members, and class laboratory space. The results of that study indicated that if we allowed our classroom scheduling software to do its job, we could house 38 to 40,000 students within our current classrooms. It also looked at our faculty space. If we followed our printed and stated faculty guidelines for space utilization, we have enough room on our campus for 38 to 40,000 students. However, when we looked at our class lab space, no matter how much technology we put in the field or how much simulations we would do, we have a shortage of class lab space. So since that time, since that study was completed, one of our strategic planning initiatives has been to plan for additional class lab space. As most of you are aware, last year the state appropriated money for the renovation of Lafferty Hall, our engineering building. When complete, we will have a fully renovated facility, increase our class lab space in this building by 44 stations, along with new research space. This project will be complete in about a year from now. Another project that was partially funded from the state is the renovation of Stewart Hall. This project is currently in design. The board previously approved this project. And so far, it looks like we are going to be able to increase our class lab stations by up to 144 seats. This project will be complete sometime in the spring of 2018. A project we have not talked about in the past is McKee Hall.
So is Stewart lab space?
Class lab, yeah. That'd be renovated to that.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
So since that project was done in 2009, that study was complete in 2009, 2010, we have been looking at McKee Hall for a possible class lab building. Its location is good. It's close to several of our STEM programs. But while some folks may look at that building from the outside, it's a 1922 building, and think it's rather attractive. Inside, it is pretty much useless for any kind of STEM teaching purposes. You see, this building was once the old women's natatorium building. Several years ago, we filled in the swimming pool just to increase the floor space, but it's never been a good building. It's a building that has a .79 FCNI. If you recall, we talked about that before too. An FCNI is a Facilities Condition Needs Index. .79 means 79% of that building needs to be replaced. So it's not a good building. It will also need $6.13 million worth of deferred maintenance on it. So the best solution for McKee Hall is to take it down and rebuild a new building there at that spot.
Are you going to build it out of the white stone to preserve
Yep.
white campus, or are you going to use that ugly yellow brick?
We're going to use the white stone.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, we need to make sure that we follow the architectural character of the area.
Okay. Thank you.
So to give me an idea where it's at, right here is our student center. I can't read it. Yeah, there's our student center, and there's the library, and here's McKee. And there's a little parking lot behind it. The building will probably be a little larger than its footprint. The preliminary programming for McKee indicates that we should be able to build a new class lab building for undergraduate STEM education for approximately $25 million. And that would get us somewhere around 220 to 225 class lab stations. This building, combined with Lafferty, combined by Stewart, removes the bottleneck for class lab needs for our campus. So this allows us to fulfill our strategic operating plan of 38,000 to 40,000 students in the future. The next project I want to talk about is new graduate family student apartment complex. You may recall that in November of 2014, we tore down the old University Village. This was a graduate student housing complex for a little over 60 students. It also had a child care facility for 29 children. 16 of those children were for our graduate students. After we removed University Village, we hired a consultant to do a market study for us to see what we need for graduate student housing. In short, the study came back and said that 400 to 700 graduate students would take advantage of graduate student housing if we would provide it within a price range of $800 a month to $1,450 a month. We feel this is a perfect project for a private entity to do instead of the institution. At this time, we are looking for a consultant to help us on a P3 project, public-private partnership. and for the old University Village site and possibly University Heights site, which I'll show you in a minute. We also will be exploring the possibility of adding childcare space to this project. So to give you an idea of where that's at, so Providence Road runs north and south. Down in this area will be Stadium. This is on the west, the main campus is over in this area, and this is on the west side. So the old University Village, you can see the buildings where they used to be. We cannot build here anymore because of the floodplain, so we'll have to move it a little bit to the east, but you can park on the floodplain. This is University Heights. These buildings are in good shape, but they're also going to have to go in the near future. So probably what will happen is this would be phase 1, and then this could be phase 2 of a P3.
Is there daycare contemplated? I know that was one of the
Yes.
the
Yep.
situations that the grad students were talking to us
Right.
about.
Is we would put part of the RFP or RFQ and RFP process would be some type of addressing daycare or childcare and how we would come back. Now, again, no matter what we do on this, we will be coming back to the board because this would not be, like I said, we're not going to build this or own it or operating is what we're thinking right now. So the next project I want to talk about is School of Nursing. You heard Mitch mention this earlier today. The existing Sinclair School of Nursing is a 66,000 square foot building that was built in 1979 and houses 975 undergraduate students. John Reeves from Krishna Architects here in St. Louis is our master planner for the health system. He told us that the current nursing facility is not conducive for any type of modern health sciences education and should either be repurposed or removed and replaced with something else. Current planning is for a new $50 million facility, School of Nursing, that would allow for 80 additional students over the 975 and would provide larger classrooms, state-of-the-art simulation center, and research pods. To give me an idea where this is at, so this is the hospital complex, University Drive. I think several of the board members went to the groundbreaking for the School of Medicine building. Okay, that's where that goes right there, the green. The School of Nursing would be right beside it. I'm not sure it would actually be touching it, but it goes in that particular area.
Where is the current School of Nursing?
Current School of Nursing is right here.
So will it be destroyed or repurposed?
One of those two. The one of those two. It's a 1979 building, so it's not one of our older buildings, but it's really not in good shape, and it was designed. It's just not a good design for anything for health sciences. So if we could repurpose it for something other than that, but it really is a prime location for another research facility, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And that's the master planner, John Reeves, because of its location and proximity to nursing and medicine, that site would be ideal and for a future research facility. So the next project is a new research facility, the Translational Precision Medicine Complex. When it's completed, this would be our premier research facility on the University of Missouri's campus. It's envisioned to be an interdisciplinary research facility bringing together researchers from medicine, vet med, and engineering. It would also consist of dry labs, wet labs, clean rooms, a good manufacturing process facility, high-resolution imaging, and vivarium space. Okay, so stadium's down here. This is college. This is our new residential life project. After going through several different studies and looking at different sites, we determined that this was the best location for that because vet med is over in this area, then we have medicine in this area, and then engineering is up by the Jesse Hall. The last of the 5 projects I want to talk about is our plant growth facilities. This is an $85 million total project cost, with the first phase being $30 million. Phase 1 would consist of 28 new greenhouse compartments located in 2 different buildings, a new head house, which is a support building for the greenhouses, and a growth chamber building that would house 77 growth chambers. Future phases of this would include 72 new greenhouse compartments and also an additional head house support space. This will be located over on our east campus. So this is, again, Stadium. My lights worked. Stadium, Ashland Road, and there's a big parking lot right here. So these are where these buildings would go. This is not necessarily a correct look where that thing would be. We'd probably have the head houses would be in the middle, and we'd go, the first phase would be up, and the second phase would be down. So the next step, and the reason why we wanted to bring these projects to you today, is that we propose to start bringing some projects to you at your February meeting for project approval. When we come to the board, we will bring a design team, the architect and engineers proposed for the project. We will bring you a project scope for the project, a timeline, and also a funding plan for that project. That concludes my presentation. Is there any questions?
To what extent do any of these projects contemplate use of bonding capacity?
We're still looking at that. The first project seems to be pretty good. We're probably going to be bringing McKee. We don't know exactly how much, but it won't be the majority of that. Of course, the graduate student housing project would not be on our dime. That would be our land with a public-private partnership for building the building.
Is the ag project research the type of research that would qualify for AAU credit?
Yes, and Dr. Fuller can talk more about that, but it's our plant sciences program.
So I'd be happy to just share a little bit more, John. It's the thinking is that, as Brian pointed out today, it's not debt capacity, it's debt affordability. And so those buildings that Gary put first are buildings that would allow us to debottleneck education for undergraduates in the science disciplines and engineering and technology. So if we get that bottleneck out of the way and we can grow revenue a bit while keeping cost fixed or close to fixed, then we ought to be able to create more margin under the revenue curve that could be used then to apply towards the bonding that we need and would address the affordability problem. The second part of your question was, yeah, we look at the future and there's 3 really big areas in the sciences that we care about, right? We care about plant science a lot, care a lot about animal sciences, and we care very, very much about that integrated medical science that brings together vet med medicine and engineering. There are many other areas that we also care about, but those areas are the ones that are the most likely to garner the kinds of statistical results that the AAU considers to be very important. Is that clear?
Does that include the research on the ag, the plant science, clearly? Because
yeah, I think I know where you're going. Yeah.
Nebraska was disqualified because they couldn't count some of their agricultural research.
Right. So, not everything we do is driven by AAU, but to the extent that we care very much about AAU and we do, the plant sciences that are funded non-competitively by the USDA count as a secondary measure. The plant sciences that are funded competitively by the NSF, for example, or Department of Energy count as primary measures. So the work that we're talking about would include a goodly amount of that which is primary measures, basic science. And we are one of the best in the world, really, at the basic plant sciences.
But we're not, just to pick up on something you just said, we're not solely looking at AAU research.
No, obviously we're a comprehensive university. We care about the humanities very much. We care about the social sciences. We care about all of those areas. And so we have to look at that. We have to look at diversity. We have to look at hiring of faculty that will diversify our campus more than it has been in the past. So all of those things are in the mix.
So these are 5 projects all on the MU campus. Are there other projects that are in the pipeline that will be brought forward at the same time on other campuses? And following up on that, to what extent might any of these qualify for 50-50 match, or the other projects that might be under consideration?
So putting my old hat back on, borrowing it from Bob, I think it was in October, I went to each of the other campus chancellors and asked them for their top project and capital needs. And I have those. We have those, and we've shared those, and we have them in hand. And we have for Kansas City from Leo, I think there was a science complex that you talked about. Yeah, finishing Spencer. Tom had one. I know that Cheryl had some, and the like.
So we'll get presented that at maybe at the next board meeting?
That will be up to the president and to others, not me with my new hat on.
I can.
We'll certainly discuss that. Yeah.
So the process usually is that we would take these to the system, right? The reports that Gary just discussed, we would share them with the president and the general officers before we would bring them to you.
And Curator Phillips, those are the top projects on the capital list you approved in June.
For
the state, we have requests into the state to finish Schrenk Hall, to finish Spencer Hall, to finish Benton Hall, to Chairman Cupps's question. Those together are about $75 million just for the 3 other campuses. But we're hoping not to use debt, and we're hoping not to use campus resources. We're hoping to get the state to pay for those like they did the $95 million that we got in M&R funding this year. We don't know what those prospects look like, and it's going to be a tough year. But right now, what MU's talking about is doing something outside of the state process potentially, but the other 3 campuses are not talking about taking that out of something that they're working on. So those will be brought individually. It's not a package in that sense.
Okay, I see your next steps just say that these will be brought back in February, and so I'm thinking about.
We will start.
So
We will
Gary
start.
only
All those
speaks for
won't
the
be
MU
brought in
campus.
February.
Be brought to the Board of Curators for
Yeah, we'll
project
start.
approval in February. And so I'm just wondering about the other campuses where they'll be in February. That's it.
And as these are brought with the details that you provide, I highly recommend making it very, very explicitly clear how students will benefit from each building in a tangible way so that it's easier, especially for the student representative, to speak with the students and really explain why this is a priority and being prioritized for them.
Let me ask this, Gary. You mentioned that the project design team will come to you, or that you'll bring the project design team to the board in February, right?
Yep. Per every single project, when we bring to the board for approval, we will bring the design
Who
team.
comprises the project design team?
It'll be the architect and the engineers.
So now, do you have to pay money out of pocket to get those basic things done before we ever approve the project? I mean, how does that work?
It's a good question. Sometimes we like to have a little bit more programming. See, right now, what I have shown you today are very, very high-level estimates. Okay, they're square foot estimates. They're based upon what we think we can do. We like to bring an architect in. They'll do a selection.
But are you paying him before you bring him in? That's what my question.
Yeah, it's called pre-consultant services.
You've already hired those?
Not for these.
Not for these? Well, when will you hire those?
Pretty quick. Especially for McKee. I mean, we'll probably get someone on
Because
McKee,
then they'll
hopefully.
have to work on whatever they're going to present in February.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep. In fact, tomorrow we have a first
Here's my
selection
question.
processes.
If we're going to pay those people, and I don't know what we're paying them, what kind of money it is, I know you got to pay them something, but let's say we get to February and we decide that's not really a project we ought to go forward on. Essentially, we've spent that, we've burnt that money, right?
Correct.
So we're taking some risk.
Right.
Okay. But we've almost got to do it that way, or we never.
Well, we can't have very good numbers then.
What's that?
We can't have very good numbers, because what we used to do in the past, years ago, is we would not have real good numbers to bring to the board. It was usually done on a square footage type basis. we found that we would rather bring to the board what we think the true cost of a project is going to be. So spending a little pre-design dollars to get those numbers better seems to pay off. The other thing is we hope that we would do a good enough job on showing the need for a campus and a funding plan that it makes sense to the board. So it's a worthwhile gamble.
I appreciate you explaining that because I couldn't figure out how we're going to approve something in February, but you're going to spend money to get us to that point, but I understand it.
It's a few thousand dollars.
How much?
A few thousand. It's not big dollars.
$2,000?
No, a few. Depends on the size of the project. Like we'll spend more on the large research facility than we will like on McKee.
Curator Snowden, you typically spend 8%, maybe 10% in some cases of your project cost on A&E. They're not talking about doing all that up front. They're talking about just doing the pre-programming to narrow the scope, get the scope and refine it. Several thousand dollars when you're talking about a $25 million building. But that's also part of what the system looks at is how reasonable are the numbers, what's the financing plan, so it's not brought to you until the campus can show us all those things. And so what Gary's talking to you about today is reordering their priorities and their capital list to get you ready for discussions in 2016.
We almost have to have that information to make a decision.
That's what it's money well spent.
Anything else? Thank you.
That is it for the Finance Committee, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn the Finance Committee.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Cindy?
Curator Henriksen?
Yes.
Curator Phillips?
Yes.
Curator Snowden?
Yes.
Curator Sparks?
Yes.
All votes in favor.
Thank you.
Let's take a 5-minute break, and let's try to be back on schedule at 4 o'clock. Item is the Audit Committee meeting.
Fortunately, the Audit Committee has only one information item. President Burnett will present us with the audited financial statements of the university.
I'm just here to introduce Susan Eichhoff with KPMG here in St. Louis. She's going to come forward and do her required communication to the Audit Committee of the Board of Curators here in open session about our financial statements from the prior fiscal year. Susan?
Good afternoon. I was joking with one of the curators that we're saving the best for the last. Going to start with the first slide. These are our required communications. We completed the audit of the financial statements back in October, and I know that various members of management have provided the overview of the financial statements, and this really just is the communications regarding the audit from the auditor. So I was the signing partner on the financial statements. We'll progress to the next slide, please, or do I do that myself? Thank you. Just want to remind you of our required communications to talk about what our responsibilities are versus what the board and management's responsibilities are, highlight a couple of things with accounting practices and estimates, and then just provide you with an overview of the scope of our services and update you on where we stand with some of the other deliverables. Next slide, please. As far as our responsibility under the professional standards, really what we're doing as the auditors is that we're forming and expressing opinions on the financial statements that have been prepared by management with the oversight of the audit committee. What we're doing is getting reasonable assurance on the financial statements to ensure that they are free of material misstatement. And we do perform the audit in accordance with government auditing standards because of the federal monies that the 4 campuses receive. We're required by standards to perform the audit in accordance with government auditing standards. We plan and perform the audit with an attitude of professional skepticism. We get along well with management and the audit committee, but we do approach the audit that something could be wrong, something could be materially misstated, and so we're performing it with what we refer to as professional skepticism. We do evaluate internal controls over financial reporting. The purpose of that is to determine our substantive procedures and not to give an opinion on internal control. And then finally, our last responsibility is to have this communication with you about the conduct of our audit. Next slide, please. From a significant accounting policies perspective, those are summarized for you within the financial statements that I know all of you have received. Regarding management's judgments and accounting estimates, there's a good handful of significant ones just to re-emphasize and bring to your attention. Those accounting estimates are an integral part of the financial statements. There are certain key estimates that we would summarize as being the allowance for doubtful accounts, the investments in the interest rate swap agreements, the estimated liability for workers' comp, general liability, health claims that you're self-insured for, the net pension and the other pension liabilities, and contractual allowances. What we do is look at those estimates individually and as a whole and make sure that we agree with the variables that are going into those estimates. As far as significant and unusual accounting transactions, we noted none. We believe that everything that we looked at occurred within the normal course of the university's business. This slide just summarizes various other aspects of the audit, related party transactions, litigation claims and assessments, any non-compliance. Basically, the summary of the slide is that there were no disagreements. There's no matters that we feel under professional standards that we need to have a conversation with you about. So from an overview of the scope of our services, we did issue unmodified opinions on the independent an auditor's report on the financial statements, and that was dated in October, as I mentioned. We also, at the same time, released our opinion in accordance with government auditing standards. That particular opinion contained no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. As far as audit misstatements or omissions, there were 2 uncorrected audit adjustments. Just a note about uncorrected audit adjustments, though, is that we do not believe, as well as management, that neither one of these caused the financial statements to be materially misstated. So in the normal course of performing audits, it's common to have uncorrected misstatements that are not material. So these 2 in particular related to the fair value of the alternative investments related to the pension trust fund, and then the write-off of accounts receivable for the discretely presented component unit. From a presentation perspective, there were 3 items that we noted to not be totally in accordance with government auditing standards with generally accepted accounting principles. Again, in summary, we do not believe any of those to cause the financial statements to be materially misstated. As far as significant changes to our audit plan, if you recall, we have planning discussions with you as the audit committee and the board of curators. We did that over the spring, and wanted to bring to your attention that the only thing that changed between the communication that we had with you as far as our plan was concerned in the spring and now was related to the University of Missouri Healthcare. As you might recall, in past years, we had issued a separate opinion over the healthcare financial statements. This year, we did not issue that separate opinion, but all that activity is included within the University of Missouri system financial report that I'm presenting on. And so all those transactions were subject still to audit. It just was a matter of how we specifically report. And then as far as independence is concerned, we are independent both as of fiscal year end, June 30th, and as of today's date of the university in every respect. Next slide, please. From an other deliverables perspective, we also issued standalone financial statements for the Capital Region Medical Center and a debt compliance letter. We do report to the separate CRMC board on those items, and so we're just giving that to you from an informational perspective. We are currently working on the agreed upon procedures reports that are required for all 4 of your campuses this year for NCAA. We'll remind you again in the spring when we deliver those results, but the NCAA changed the guidelines this year for those agreed upon procedures reports. And so we're working through those right now, and we'll highlight changes for you when we present those in April. And then also we are working on the federal audit. This is referred to as the single audit. This is the audit that we do of your major programs, primarily consisting of the research and development cluster and the student financial aid cluster, some of which you were talking about earlier this afternoon. And then just from an other perspective, we did issue an independent accountant's consent for the inclusion of our report on your commercial paper issuance. That's something that we do annually as you are required to obtain that for your commercial paper. Last slide, we just wanted to bring to your attention that we have our Audit Committee Institute that offers some insights and some resources for the Audit Committee should you need anything. We've brought you some of these topics before, but this is just an information slide for you to have in case you want to access our site or call our hotline or request any information to help you. It's got a lot of best practice and benchmarking contents. That's the high-level summary that I have for you. Is there any questions that I can answer related to the audit or where we stand with our other deliverables? All right.
I think
very
that's good.
Thank you.
Very much, Susan. I would now entertain a resolution or a motion from the Audit Committee to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Cindy?
Curator Graham,
Yes.
Curator Henriksen,
Yes.
Curator Phillips,
Yes.
all committee votes in favor.
At this time, the board will go into executive session.